This is the Provo Municipal Council work session. We're convened at 1:10 in the City Conference Room on July 11th, 2017. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, Provo City Council, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. Please be aware that the microphones in the room pick up the noise of paper and other rustling objects. Further, be aware that the microphones can pick up side conversations. We'll now begin with the roll call. Mr. Strachan.
Cliff Strachan. Brian Jones.
David Hardy.
Dave Sewell.
Dave Knacht.
Kate Andrew.
George Stewart.
Gary Winterton.
Wayne Parker.
Thank you. The opening prayer will be offered by Council Attorney.
Our dear Father in heaven, we thank thee for the opportunity to gather together to discuss the welfare of the citizens of Provo and to fulfill our responsibilities as officials in the city and as those interested in the welfare and benefit of the city. We ask thee, Father, to guide each of those that are involved in these discussions, that we may all participate in a spirit of edification and of seeking the best interests of this city and its citizens. We ask thee to bless us with direction and to bless the members, our elected officials, with a spirit of discernment and with the guidance to make decisions that are in the best interests of those that they represent. We ask thee, Father, to bless the citizens of this city and help them to be safe and protected in all that they do, and to be blessed and edified. And these things we pray for in the name of thy Son. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. All right, the first item of business is an introduction of the respective board and commission appointments. We have several here with us. I guess we'll just go through the list here. First, Mr. Mark Leitner. Announce that.
Morning, or afternoon already.
And if you could just take just a minute to introduce yourself, and then there may be a question or two.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, my name is Mark Leitner. I've lived in the community for almost 6 years now. My career, I failed retirement twice. My first career was 37 years in public schools in California. In fact, I'm a Californian by birth until I was 62, and somehow Highway 80 caught me, and I ended up in Provo. I spent 37 years in public education, the last 18 as a school district superintendent. When I retired, one of my vendors happened to be a company called Imagine Learning, which is over in Riverwoods. The CEO and one of the other founders, chief sales officer, were good friends of mine, and we had done a lot of business. They said, "Oh, you don't want to retire. You want to move from San Jose to Provo." And I looked at it. So it turned out to be a really neat job, and I was there for 5 years. My wife, as I said, we moved here just about 6 years ago, and we love living in Provo. I never guessed it. You have that white stuff. We have this white stuff that comes out of the sky that I wasn't prepared for. And the back of my car doesn't go straight anymore. Other than that, we've actually loved being here. I retired a little over a year ago from Imagine Learning, and I'm now Senior Vice President, which is a title for volunteering with the Responsibility Foundation. We're the ones who have the statue across the street that the city purchased. My responsibilities for the programs and services we provide across the nation. I am a volunteer for that. I work 3 days a week. My boss says I work 3 days a week, and I love doing what I'm doing, so I have a lot of fun. The other thing that I find amazing about Provo is the support for the arts and parks and recreation and the people of our city. I've lived all over California, and I have never lived in a city, quite honestly, that supports its people the way Provo does. And I'm so proud to be here and to have to say to you as council members, thank you for that. I also, every time I get my house tax bill, find out it's a quarter of what it was in California. I say thank you to you guys, so thank you. But we love living here. One of the activities that I'm a swimmer. I love swimming. And so I spend a lot of time at the rec center. And I happened to talk to Scott Henderson about how cool a place it is. I don't know if you folks have lived other places, but that facility is world class. It is world class. So we were talking about that in the parks, and my wife and I go to the Covey regularly. And he said, well, then you want to be on the Parks and Rec Commission. And so here I am today. I am super excited about the opportunity. And my goal as if appointed, is just to make sure that we continue to have that kind of service. It is amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. I'm just super excited to do that. So that's my life in a thumbnail, and I hope I get to serve in that capacity.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, you can ask lots of questions.
I'm assuming you don't want to straight property taxes.
Pardon me? I'm hard of hearing. I apologize. My wife says I'm hard of listening, which is probably
Assuming
true.
you probably don't want us to raise property taxes.
No, I would vote for them if as long as I know what they're going for.
Well,
I mean, whether it be schools, obviously being in schools and having to pass bond issues, the school increases in property tax, I'm always for, because our schools are doing good things. If it's for the right reason, absolutely. We should
answer.
Yeah, no, we should pay. I mean, folks, literally my home tax in a house exactly the same size as I live in now, within 10 square feet, okay, was $13,000. Okay, and it went up to $2,800, and I looked at that and went, okay. So if it's more because we're doing something and it's specific, and you folks have done that, I'll sign up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now we have 3 prospective appointments for the Arts Council. Mr. Jeffrey Kahn.
Good to be with you today. I was thinking driving down here today, I should be interviewing you instead of you interviewing me. Reason for that is I've been involved as a volunteer for years in Provo. I was chairman of the Provo City Library Board twice. Once when George was the mayor, and was personally involved in getting that new library built. Was on the planning commission, was appointed by, Lewis. Hated that calling, absolutely hated it, because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So I would always sit by people who understood it and vote the same way that they did. Professionally, I am a entrepreneur. My partners and I own hotels, health clubs, and don't laugh at this, scrapbook stores all over the world. You may not know this, but scrapbooking is a very recession-proof business. And now with digital scrapbooking, it becomes even a greater thing. A lot of people think only members of the LDS Church do scrapbooking. That's about as far from the truth as you can get. Also, my partners and I, and we started this about 3 years ago, we currently manage 3 singing groups on the road. One Republic, the band Perry, and a lady by the name of Carolyn Wonderland, all of which are on tour. I'm going to have back surgery on Friday, but once I'm recovered, I will be going out to just watch them. I grew up in Southern California, played bass guitar for the Beach Boys for a number of years. Brian Wilson is still one of my closest friends. If you ever saw the movie Love and Mercy, which is his biography, you will see my name there as a technical advisor. On a volunteer basis, here I've been on the board of trustees at UVU twice, chaired about every board that there is there. Currently chair the board for all of the veterans at UVU, and there are about 1,000 of them. We just did a golf tournament, raised over $22,000 for the vets. Also chaired the advisory board for the College of Performing and Visual Arts at SUU in Cedar City. If you were to ask my wife to describe me, one of the things she would say is, Jeff is always performing. He's always on, regardless of who he's talking to or what he is talking about. When I found out about the Provo Arts Council being reinstated, I wanted to be involved and do whatever I could to help that and help the city. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm glad I went first.
Next, we have Heather Jensen. Is she here? Okay. And then we'll move on to Jane Wise.
I'm Jane Wise. I'm a native Utahn. I was born and raised in Salt Lake. Went to the University of Utah, was a theater and English major. Then I went to law school at the University of Utah before this law school had gotten started. And one of the first things I did was to incorporate Salt Lake Acting Company. So I've been very involved in the theater scene in Salt Lake. I raised a family in San Diego and moved back 20 years ago. So I've lived in Provo for 20 years. I teach at BYU Law School. I am a radio writer and commentator. And my daughter said, you should be on the Provo Arts Council. My daughter lives in Amsterdam, so here I am.
Thank you. Next, we have Andrew Howard, who's a prospective appointment for the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Well, my first inclination is, my name's Andrew Howard, is to take a step back when I introduce myself, knowing that I'm Jackson Howard's son.
We just heard about Jackson in the last meeting. He beat 10 attorneys. We're in good shape.
Okay, all right. Well, Cliff Strachan and I know each other quite well. We're former brothers-in-law, and I would say we're good friends. I associate with his children quite often. Anyway, it's an honor to be here with you. I've so many qualified people. I'm not sure I even stand up to the test that I've heard, but I'm a native of Provo, Utah. I went to Timpview High School, and when I graduated from Timpview, I went and joined the Navy. I was in the Navy for 4 years and got out when the getting out seemed appropriate, and got my MBA at Westminster College in Salt Lake City. And at that time, Wasatch Bank was being sold, and I was invited to join the board of directors at AmBank. And by the way, AmBank has celebrated its 20 years last year in the banking business. And we just won an award for small business lending for a bank our size. We're #1 in Utah. So that's good. Yes, ma'am.
Would you please stand at the podium?
Oh, sure. Over here?
That's great. That makes your face a little better.
Little better contrast.
Yeah, and then it would be
I
so
don't
bright
think
in
you
your
can
eyes.
improve this bug of mine.
You look great.
Okay, but anyway, so I went to Timpview, and brothers and sisters went to Provo High School, so we have a healthy rivalry in that way. But when I graduated from Westminster, I've served the bank in Provo for 20 years. It's hard to believe it's gone by that quickly. And I've recently become the president of the bank in January, and it's an honor to serve the bank that way. And I served in the Navy Reserve for 25 years. I was fortunate to have the support of a caring crew and good mentors, and retired at the rank of captain in 2011. And since then, my community service has been mainly with the bank. However, I've been American Legion Post 13 commander here in Provo, and I've been fortunate enough to serve the mayor on his Veterans Council. And so those are the things that I think I can bring to the table. The reason I'm interested in the commission is to learn more about how the city does things. I was hearkened to read that Provo City was the best managed city in the country, according to at least one group, and that's certainly a flattering thing. I'd like to be a part of that. Certainly no, I don't have all the answers. My boss will tell you that, but I'm interested in learning and interested in participating and interested in contributing to my community. And any questions?
Fred's your brother, right?
Fred is my brother. I have 5 siblings. One is deceased. He was in the Marine Corps, and then Fred, and then I have a sister in Arizona, a sister in Saratoga Springs, and a sister in Orem, Utah.
If you want to learn more about Fred, go visit Jackson and he'll tell you he's very proud of his son.
Yes. Well, we have yeah, I decided to not be a lawyer.
Oh, I mean Andrew, it wasn't because of the military service.
Well, we got
Kind of glossed over that.
Yeah.
Jackson has a lot of stories that.
Well, thank you, sir. I can probably add to those.
Well, we'd like to thank all of you for your willingness to serve in these capacities, and I believe we'll be voting on the confirmation next Tuesday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to item number 2. Thank you. We do have 2 sets of minutes, which I didn't notice. One for April 18th. Does anyone have any concerns or corrections?
The first 7 minutes, there was a, and I added a presentation gap, just missing words. So that was corrected. I accomplished it on sign, the draft.
I get to do what I do because.
And then, I have not had a chance to fully review your comments that you wanted to have included for the meeting. So could we continue this?
Where's the without one?
Really? Okay, so with that correction that was just mentioned, is there any objection to approving the April 18th minutes and then deferring the May 2nd to our next meeting? Seeing none, I'll declare the April 18th minutes approved by unanimous consent. And let's move on to item number 2, which is a presentation from Downtown Provo, Inc., Executive Director Kate Peterson.
Put full screen on the bottom of it. Right. Yep.
Did you have to come down from the mountain this time?
Not this time. I thought about wearing my scout uniform for you guys again, but I opted out. I've also showered this time, so it's a big deal. Cool. So I hope you can bear with me because I don't know what normally happens in these meetings or what was expected of the previous director. So I'd like to just first introduce myself and then sort of introduce our program, DPI. I know most of you are familiar with the Downtown Provo program, but I'm going to summarize kind of what we are, why we exist, and then how we're set up as far as the board structure and so on. Then I'm going to kind of summarize what we do and then share some quantifiable numbers for what we've been doing recently. And then I'm going to end just kind of with some goals that we have. So first, I'm Quinn Peterson. I went to Springville High School, just south here. My dad teaches at BYU. He transferred. I was born and did elementary school over on the West Coast. He got his PhD over there and then taught at Oregon State where I did elementary school. And then we transferred out here to Mapleton, went to Springville High School. After that, I served a mission out in Tennessee and came back, attended BYU. While I was attending BYU, I started a little clothing company. I made all the neckties for my mission. And so when I came back, made a little company back in 2009. We grew, did all sorts of other accessories and such. We're still running. I hired my sister and her friends, and we have a whole crew, about 12 different producers that produce our goods, and we ship them all over the world. In that process, I had another sales job, school, this clothing thing. I bought a duplex on 3rd South. So that was in 2013, and it was an old, rough, abandoned house, and I've enjoyed putting it back together, and that's what I've done for a lot of years now. So about 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to help Unhinged, which is a store on Center Street here, but their first location was in Sugar House. And he was selling my products up there, and so I had a relationship with him, and he knew I was in Provo. So he asked me to take over his Provo store and help him get established. So I ran that store for 4 years. And in that experience, I worked with Jared Morgan, and then Mike, and then Brady. So I've had a lot of experience with the DPI program. And throughout that time, I've seen a lot of great things, and I've seen a lot of crappy things. And so as I work with other businesses downtown, we see ways they can improve. We see things that they've done well. And I kind of came up with reports that I would give, especially with our last director. I gave him reports on how they could improve. And I was redirected to the city. And so I visited with Scott Bowles, and he said, hey, these are great ideas. Do you want to run our farmers market? So I ran the farmers market last year, and I run it again this year. So I'm still doing that. It's been a great experience. Worked with the board over there. When our last director resigned of DPI, I was chosen to take over the program. And so that's been not too long, about 3 months now-ish. So that's kind of a background on who I am and how I got set up with this program. Aside from running Unhinged and being involved in the city and owning property on 3rd South, running a business myself, I had a lot of insights for what could be done and some ideas. So it's been exciting to kind of be put in place and have these opportunities. What is DPI? We have an outstanding city with a lot of outstanding businesses and programs. Our job is not to be a big cog in this machine. We're just here to help lubricate everything. We have some great businesses, some great events, a great city to work with, and we're just a liaison to make sure that everyone can communicate effectively and optimize everyone's opportunities. We consist of a board of directors. This board of directors has a representative from the city. Wayne Parker's been on the board for quite a long time, and we have Gary Winterton, who's joined us recently, and he's been able to see what we're doing on a regular basis. We also have representatives from New Skin, Zions Bank, BYU, UVU, the Utah Valley Visitors Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, and a handful of other small business owners, Gurus, Dean Judd, Lisa Los Hermanos, and a few others. So that board of directors helps us make decisions and make sure that we have the right vision and direction. We meet on a monthly basis where I report on what we've been doing, and that's kind of the system for how we're set up. So I want to summarize kind of a lot of what we do. Oh, excuse me. I also have available, if you haven't seen these, in the process of this revamp when I took over recently, we did update the bylaws. They more clearly outline who is the board, why is the board, what do they do, what's their responsibility, and then what is the executive director supposed to be doing. So you guys have had 3 different directors, and they've been great for different reasons and poor for different reasons. And so we just tried to sort of fine tune this to really make it the best we can. So I kind of put us into 3 categories as far as what we do. We try to create a voice for the downtown businesses. When I was running Unhinged, I was concerned about Mayor Curtis leaving us. And because I was concerned, I wanted the businesses to have an opportunity to visit with the different mayoral candidates. So we set up these meetings with about 20 businesses downtown, and we brought on the different candidates who had announced at the time, and we just asked them hard questions. What are you going to do about X, Y, and Z? And it became a great platform for the businesses to sort of address their issues and find out what these different candidates were willing to do. But having these meetings allowed us to realize that we all had a lot of the same pain points, and we didn't know that. I knew that I had dealt with a couple homeless people coming into the business and sort of harassing customers, or they'd be passed out in front of our door and we needed to have them moved. But I didn't realize how big of a problem it was until I visited with the other business owners. And we all sort of got together and realized this is a big deal. What should we do? Some of the other issues that came up were parking. Matt escaped just in time for me to mention that. Hopefully he can still hear my voice. Parking is another issue that needed to be addressed. So when I took over the program, one of the first things we did was we had our Lincoln Lunch, where we brought Bill Holterstrom from United Way, Community Action, Food and Care, and the Police Department. And all of them were able to show up and talk about what is the real problem, what's being done, and how can we help. Really, we just want to create an opportunity for these businesses to have a voice. So when they have an issue like homelessness, DPI can be that liaison to help coordinate with the police department and United Way and whoever has resources to really have that conversation. Because when we're all busy running our businesses, we're busy running our businesses. And we don't have time to do things on this high level. And that's where the program steps in. Aside from these issues and the voice we want to create for downtown, we really do everything we can to create some collaboration. When I ran Unhinged, we realized that we had some really low points in the year traffic-wise. And we wanted to find out how we could better boost that. So I brought in my barber. He cut my hair about an hour ago. So I had worked with him a whole bunch, and I thought he was excellent. So we brought him in and opened a barbershop in Unhinged. And he did really well. He started getting booked, and he got about 4 months booked. So we brought in another barber, and now we have 4. So as we were able to cross-pollinate this market, we both benefit, and we both had an increased value. I think there are a lot of opportunities like that in the city, where there's a pain point that one person has, and if we can get 2 businesses together, they both can succeed. Aside from bringing in the barbershop, one issue that we had was rooftop. We thought, this is a great event, and we have a lot of people here, but how can we best capitalize on all this foot traffic? And I think a lot of businesses have struggled with this issue. What we did at Unhinged was we asked the barbershop to stay open that night. Because the barbers are booked out 3 months on appointments, every first Friday, they take walk-ins from 6 p.m. to midnight. And that allows people to come into the store, sit around, and wait. And while they sit, they shop. And while they shop, we asked Rocco's to come over. CJ over at Rocco's comes over, and he takes orders from the guys who are waiting for haircuts. And so CJ stays busy, the barbershop stays busy, and Unhinged stays busy. And so I think often there are these opportunities to collaborate and make some of these pain points a better solution. So we've been able to share these things now that I run the program with a lot of the other businesses downtown. When they deal with issues like street closures, there are solutions. It's just a matter of figuring those out. And sometimes it takes that outside perspective to figure it. Another thing, collaboration-wise, it's a great example of how DPI, we're not here to get in anyone's way, and we're not here to wave our flag about how great we are. We really just want to help other businesses do what they do better. Many of you may know we have some great programs in the city. Braid Workshop is one that's spearheaded by your Economic Development Department, and it's for female entrepreneurs. And they get together and they can talk about specific issues: how to do better email marketing, how to do better, how to set up an LLC successfully, how to manage a partnership without getting, screwed. So they address these issues, and they're a really great program. Aside from them, we also have Creative Collaborative. The Creative Collaborative also meets once a month, and they're very similar in nature. They visit with different creative artists and talk about how they've become successful, obstacles they've overcome. Another one we have are Utah YouTubers, digital creators. There's a whole list of people who meet once a month, and they have great programs. So we want them to be more successful. So we got together, and we decided that if they could all meet on the same night of the week, so we picked Tuesdays. If they can all meet on Tuesdays, Utah YouTubers, you take the first Tuesday of the month. Creative Collaborative, which is tonight, by the way, you take the second Tuesday of the month. Braid Workshop, you take the third. So we line them all up so that as a city and as residents, we can grow an expectation. It's Tuesday. Who are we going to have today? And as DPI, we can then market this new Tuesday activity. So we didn't step in. We don't take credit. We don't take money. We don't take anything other than let's coordinate. We all are going to meet in the same location each Tuesday night. And so the residents who go to Creative Collaborative can now find out what Braid Workshop is, and they can go there too. So we just step in anytime we can to try to help collaborate with these organizations. The last thing is the culture. Downtown is not just a place with a lot of businesses, but it's a place that kind of has its own feel, its own spirit. And we want it to not be a place people drive through to get to the freeway, but we want it to be a place that's a destination for people. And they don't drive through it, but they drive to it. And so part of how we can accomplish this goal, we've done a lot to work on the vacant spaces. We address which vacant spaces there are, and we address why are they vacant? Why has the property owner not been incentivized, and how can we incentivize that property owner? What businesses are looking for spaces, and how can we collaborate between the city, the buyer, and the seller? And I think that when we have these conversations, we have a lot more success. We're currently in conversations with one of the properties downtown, and it's looking quite promising. We do everything we can to keep track of who's moving in and who's moving out. So that we can know, hey, so-and-so is moving in 6 months. That means so-and-so who's looking for a spot in 6 months will have a vacancy. So we deal with vacancies because we don't want vacancies. It destroys the culture downtown. And in places that have a vacant storefront, we want to help beautify those to create more of an environment. Another one that we do, the only thing that we actually run as a program is the art stroll. The art stroll happens every first Friday, and it has had, again, it's had some really high points in the past few years and some really low points. So we try to figure out what's been good and what's not done well. And we currently have formed our own subcommittee that handles the arts within our program. This arts committee that we've created is to address all the things that the city's arts council can't. I brought some of these issues to the mayor a little while ago, and we didn't want to spread your arts council too thin, so he asked me to create one of my own. So we've created one, and we're addressing certain issues. One of those issues that we're working on is the art stroll, how we can improve the art stroll and what's going to be done. One of the things on our agenda is a mural program. We have 12 walls donated where we want to do murals downtown. We're setting aside the artists and the funding to get this done so that we can create a rotating art program where every first Friday we can put up art on a new mural. And after those 12 months are up, we'll go back to the first one and do a new mural on it. So we can have a rotating art on these 12 walls. That's one of the programs that we're working on. The next one we're working on with this arts committee is the public art on UTA stops. UTA is willing to have public art on the new BRT stops, but legally they're not allowed to fund it or choose it. So they've been sort of crying for someone to help. And we've stepped in and we've been meeting with them. We have the parameters on where we can put the art. We have the timeline figured out. And so we're to the point now to line up artists and really make this happen. So those are some of the things we're trying to do to help create and improve the culture downtown. Now I have a couple things I wanted to do to help you kind of quantify what we've been doing. What is our report? How can you measure it? So now I'm ready. Slide, finally. I don't know if this is going to do it. Want to jump to the next one? So in all of 2016, the Instagram account grew 1,700 followers from January to the end of December. It's all right. We only have like 4 slides. So this is where it was a little while after I started. I took a screenshot so I could document our improvement. And I've been in 3 months. So in 3 months, you want to go to the next slide? So in 3 months, we've grown 906 followers. So it's more than double the increase they had last year. And this is something I'm really excited about. Not only have we had an increased followership like significantly, but the activity level is through the roof. When I took over, there were no, I don't know if you guys are familiar with how the Instagram program works, but when you post a picture, you can tag locations and people. And when I took over, no one had tagged anything for 3 months. No other third party, because they weren't aware of downtown existing. After we started to ramp up, get more followers, post more things, and have more activities, we probably have 1 a day right now, where people post pictures downtown and they tag Downtown Provo because it's cool. And so we get those tags and we repost a lot of these things. Let's see. So another one that we've done that's been received very well, we've had a lot of good feedback from it, is we've put together a weekly email. We try to send out an email each Thursday that says what's happening this weekend. A lot of weekends, there's regular things, like the farmer's market happens every Saturday, so we don't always talk about that. But if there's any special event that's happening, like the first Friday, the art stroll and the rooftop concert series, we try to get that information out. We have a pretty big and a growing email list of the residents downtown, about 3,000 emails right now that we send out just to let people know what's going on.
You say residents of downtown?
I'm sorry, residents of Provo, my mistake. Yeah. I don't think there's quite 3,000 that live downtown yet. We're getting there, but not yet. Now, here's a piece I wanted to share. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find very good records of what's been done in the past financially. This is the best thing we could come up with. It's sort of a comparison from January through May financially last year compared to this year. Only got 10 of them, so you're lucky if you get one. I have enough for all the council members. So this just compares these different years, and we are really excited. I actually didn't know. Oh, I've got extras. You can check it out too. Sure. I didn't really know what the goals and benchmarks were, but when we sat down with Randy over at Top CFOs, he's the one that helps us put this stuff together. He had some excellent news. You'll notice at each one of these different totals, we've improved, whether it's costs dropping or income increasing. In the very end, when you get to the end of the final page, our total income is, or our total gain has only increased by 3%, but that's because this was just before I had received the check from the city for the match. So it's significantly more now. So we've done a lot to cut costs and increase, no luck, that's all right, and to increase our income. One thing that I care about most on this increased income are the small businesses. The small businesses are the ones that were angry at the downtown program for times. We have a lot of big businesses like Google and Nu Skin and Marriott and Coca-Cola that help run our program, but they're not the ones that need the program. Who need the program are people like Unhinged and Station 22 and the Foxglove and Pioneer Books, but they're not the ones that were actively a part of the program because they weren't treated important enough. And that's been a huge focus of mine because I was one of those people. In the third quarter last year, we had 3 small business memberships sign up, and for a total of $950. In the third quarter this year, we have got 12 small businesses sign up for a total of $5,450. Not only have we had more businesses sign up, but the average dollar amount per business has gone up significantly. The membership fees that we've set up in the past 3 months is it's $500 for any small business to join our program. It used to be really flexible. It's not anymore. It's $500. And we do that because we think the value is there. We've created the value enough that the stuff that we provide is worth the money. And we're excited about that and the support that we've had so far. The most important thing we do is the hardest one to quantify. And it is just being in the right place and knowing the right people every day. And so this is definitely the most valuable part of our program, but it's just quite difficult to say how often we do it and what numbers show it. But I just want to share an example because it happens every day. Yesterday, we had a meeting with a group of people who do a fireworks show every 24th. They've done it for a few years for just their friends. Last year, they decided to really grow it and turn it into an event. They had about 5,000 people show up. So this year, they're looking for sponsorships and a new location. They were doing it at Kiwanis Park, I believe, and that park is under construction currently, so they need a new spot. So they visited with me to try to see how they could get some funding and a location, and we said, you know, I think this is the opportunity, an opportunity where the mall would love to step in. The mall is under new management, new ownership, and they have a lot of fun things going on, and they have a ginormous parking lot. So not only is it on private property, so you can escape a lot of these fees that you're incurring from being in a park, they have their own security, they have their own restrooms, and I'll bet they'll write you a check to help them. So, and we made the phone call, and it sounds like that's going to happen. So these are the things that are hard to quantify, and they really happen every single day. But it's just talking with the businesses, finding out what their needs are, and connecting them with the right people. That is what we do on a daily basis. And in the end here, I just wanted to share some success stories, but it really boils down to, I mean, I don't want to take any more time talking about how great we are as a program. I feel confident that any one of you can go ask a small business downtown how we've been in the past 3 months, and they'll give you a positive review. I want you to ask any people who are on our board, any people who've been on the board. Wayne's someone who's worked with us. Dean Judd, who owns Gurus. Gary has been to several of our meetings. Scott Bowles, who is in economic development, now he's at the mall. Nu Skin, they have Ross Salmon that represents them. Jaime over at Zions Bank. The Marriott Convention Center, the Provo Film Society, Tom and Anders Taylor. There's a huge list I have here of the people that are a part of our downtown program, and I'm confident that you can talk to any one of them to hear a positive review on what we've been doing. I'm excited for what we've been able to do so far, and I'm even more excited about what we're going to be able to do. Last week, we took the opportunity, I set up a meeting with Jason Mathis. He runs the Downtown Alliance in Salt Lake. He was more than gracious to have us to answer all of our questions. We brought Matt and we brought Chad from Economic Development to see what is it they do and how do they do it. He shared with us their budget. He shared with us how they structure it. And the key for them is their budget. They have proven to the city and to the community that they're a valuable program. And as they've proven that to the community, the trust has grown and the budget has increased. They've set up an assessment that works well to fund 30% of their annual funding. And he's sharing with us all these details. We hope that in the next few years as we grow, we can set up a similar program with the trust that we gain from both the city and the business community to set up an assessment to help fund our program. And our goal is we would like to split the funding that we have with an assessment with the parking program. We hope we can get to that point as we grow your confidence and as we grow the confidence of the community. And that's the end of, oh, I guess I should show you some more slides. Show a couple more. So this is an example. Borzen, a lot of you, who's met him? Only 2. I hope Borzen's not watching. Okay, I want all of you to go meet Borzen. He has the coffee shop here. They do hot chocolate, cookies, muffins, and coffee. And then 2 doors down, he has Cafe on Fire. It's a Persian kebab place, and it's outstanding. So 3 of you have been there. Okay, it's really good stuff. And he felt burned by the last program. He was ticked. He didn't feel like he had the support he needed, and he just felt like he was being asked for money. So we've really done everything we can to turn that around for him, and he's been very pleased. We put this together for him in about 24 hours. We were able to get the mayor there. Go to the next slide. And then I didn't know how we were going to get people, so I went over to Aveda, which is right here, that morning when they have their big team meeting, because I've been working with Aveda. And I said, I know you have your team meeting. Would you be willing to announce that there's a big party down the street for an opening? And they probably sent more than 100 girls down there to this thing. And so Borzen was just ecstatic. He was stoked. Let's go to the next one. I think this is my last one. And this is a video we made for the virtual reality place that just opened. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I wish the mayor was here, but the mayor went down there and he played virtual reality on their system. I think he said he'd never done it before. And unfortunately, Channel 17 didn't keep all the funny clips. It was wildly entertaining to watch him play virtual reality. He got scared out of his mind. He ran into 2 walls. It was a lot of fun. But let's watch this video. This is a video we put together for this new business that just opened. Oh, darn it. There's no audio.
What's their address?
It is right next to where the Madison was, right next door. So it's probably like 290 West Center Street. So I'll be his audio. He's explaining how they work. They have the new HTC Vive. It's $25 an hour. You can have 4 people per space. You go with your friends, and the funnest part is not playing, but it's actually watching your friends play. You can see what they're doing on the screen, and then you play. So he's shooting dinosaurs in that. This is an archery one that he played. And we helped them set this up. We did kind of a grand opening for them. We've done a lot of promotions for them, and they've only been there about 3 months now, I think, and they've already outgrown their space. So right now, they're one of the people that we're in negotiations with to purchase the building next to them, which has been vacant for 16 years. So we love to work with these businesses downtown and provide resources that we can. And really, it's not that we're some big program that hosts big special events and has a giant budget to throw money around. We just try to connect the right people with the right people to make good things happen. So what kind of questions do you have? I don't want to just end, but yeah.
So in your book, they were kind enough to open their upstairs for that.
They were.
Great meeting. I went to the one down at Startup. So how often do you take your show on the road?
Yeah, so the first meeting I had once I took over, the first Lincoln Lunch we had, I had a lot of negative reviews of the Lincoln Lunch. A lot of people said they're a waste of time. I don't go. And I was a part of the program, but I didn't go either at Unhinged. I just didn't want to cut the time out. And so in our first meeting, we asked, why do you guys hate this? How could it be better? And one of the things that people suggested is we want to see more of the city. So can we move the locations? So we're not going to do it every month. This month is going to be back at the Zions Bank building. But I'd say almost every other month, we're going to try to be in a different location to kind of showcase the space. Because a lot of the people that came to that Lincoln Lunch, they'd never been to Pioneer Book. They didn't even know it was there. They didn't know they had an upstairs. And they have a really great program there. The Startup building, apparently they did a Lincoln Lunch there like 5 years ago, right? They hadn't even finished the renovation yet when they had the last one. It was right when they purchased the building. And so they were really eager to show off their space and what they've accomplished. So we're hoping to do it every other month-ish. We're setting one up in 2 months. It's going to be down at the mall in September for them to kind of explain what they're doing, what fun things are happening, and what changes are coming about. Yeah, that's a great question. What else? Yeah.
On your financing, you had a goal for $37,000.
Yep.
What was that?
I don't have any idea. That was something Brady set up. It was a gold membership, and it was supposed to represent a certain dollar amount of donation. But but the dollar amount that they paid, it really fluctuated, and what they got really fluctuated. I just eliminated the program.
What is sponsorship?
So that's just membership. Anybody who pays into our program to
City.
membership.
Would it be the city, the 22,000?
No, this is before the city gave us any money. So sponsorship just means any money that we received for our program. It should say membership.
Okay, your payroll taxes look odd.
Do they?
4,600.
I don't have a clue.
You might want to look at that.
I'll ask Randy.
There were some really unusual things happening last year. Quinn has come in and taken hold of things and really changed it around, gotten with Randy. They're figuring a lot of things out. There are a lot of questions about last year, not that there were anything that was not inappropriate necessarily, just a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of records were not kept appropriately. And Quinn has come in, tightened the ship. And Quinn, how many businesses have you visited on Center Street?
Oh man, every day. I don't know. So in the process of restructuring the board and creating the new bylaws, I was not the DPI director, but I was very concerned because the people who were making the decision about what the board should be was the current board. And the current board was Zions Bank, Nu Skin, Wells Fargo, all these monsters who don't need it. And so I went to Wayne and I expressed this concern. I said, I think that the small businesses need to have a voice. And so Wayne said, if you can get me their email addresses, I'll send them a survey. So I went and I met every business owner on Center Street. I didn't get a hold of all of them, but I got a hold of most of them and I got their email addresses. So I feel pretty comfortable that I've met a lot of them. Not everyone yet. The business owners aren't always there and sometimes they're harder to get a hold of. Usually their employees are there, but I've done everything I can and I'm still working on it, so.
I went to the first meeting, I think the first time that I went was in January, and a lot of the board members said, we're just about through. We're just about done from where we're at. And came back asking for sponsorships, and they said, we're not sure we're going to be able to participate this year. And over the last few months, things have changed. The board is very excited. They've broken it up into sub-boards and working things out, and there's a lot of new energy around it. And they recognize the opportunity and the blessing that the city is to them. And they recognize, I think in the past, that they've been told that hopefully they'll be weaning off of the city to some degree. You know? What that'll be, well, I think a lot of it depends on how active they become and how well accepted they are in the business community. But I think new bylaws, new attitudes, and the people that were ready to quit are back on board again. They feel very comfortable and very excited about the things that are happening.
Yeah, we had two that said, we're not going to fund you anymore. It was Nu Skin and Zions Bank both. And so we convinced them both to give me a 6-month trial period before they pull out altogether. So they cut their funding in half. They gave me 6 months, and we were going to review in September. Everyone was past due when I took over. No one had paid because they didn't have any confidence in the program. But I've had very good reports from both Nu Skin and Zions Bank. I told Jaime at Zions Bank, I said, okay, if you pay me $5,000 now and we reassess in September, then you're going to want to pay me $20,000. And he said, he laughed and said, maybe. So, so we'll see what we can grow. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to still grow. And I appreciate that comment. I want to also say, though, we want to hear criticism, because I know that for a long time, a lot of you weren't happy with the program. And I don't want you to sit and stew if you have frustrations about me or about our program. I want you to tell me so that we can make it better. And if we're not doing things how you think we should, please let us know. If it's the me or the board or whoever needs some improvement, we want that communication to be open. My office is on the 2nd level, right next door here, above where the Madison used to be, in the Remax building. I'm very close. Sometimes I even use the restrooms in here because I'm so close. You know, we only have one over there. So I'm here every day almost. So please let me know what criticisms you come up with. Yeah.
So knowing Scott Bowles.
Yeah.
I would think that would be an asset. And can you find ways, are there ways to create some synergy back
Absolutely.
and forth?
So there are. So they're going to be members in the near future, and they have a lot to offer our program. There are some people who are concerned that they're not part of downtown. So are we spreading our resources too thin? And so that's what we're trying to, that's why they're not members yet, is we're trying to outline how that's going to work and how it best benefits the community.
What do you consider downtown businesses?
So I'll tell you right now, I think you guys have a downtown business district. But I mean, I think from the mall to Bulldog, I think that's downtown. I think if any one of these businesses increases, so Chad and I, we just went up to Salt Lake and we visited with Spitz. I don't know if you guys have been there. It's an excellent restaurant. And we found out that they're trying to launch 5 new locations. So we got the names of the owners and we want Provo to be one of them. And they said, that sounds like a total possibility. So we're reaching out to set up these meetings. So my point is, whether Spitz moves to Bulldog or to Center Street, I don't care, because it's going to benefit downtown. Whether it's in the mall or on Center Street, I don't care. It's going to benefit downtown. I really see an increase in the economy anywhere in the city is going to help downtown. So I guess I'd say I think that my scope's a little wider than just Center Street.
Another question. You talk about the value was being in the right place and working with. What other value do you feel that you're providing? Is there anything that you particularly provide other than collab? You talked about the 3 things: the collaboration, the culture, adding those are the 3 things. Is the value where you see the value for?
So I think the biggest value really is the whole networking opportunity and me visiting and finding out what the needs are and creating solutions. But we do also have a list of benefits that members get. They get a hugely significant decrease on UTA passes for their employees. Any business signs up, they get giant discounts on UTA passes, and I push that hard. We get 30% off at the rec center. We have discounts through a lot of these different programs. Corporate Alliance, they get 35% off of membership there when they're a member with us. And we provide, we have 2 services that we're working on launching right now. One of them is the Street View, the Google Street View, where you can walk around inside of a business. So we've hired a company and we've worked out a great deal where I pay them for a membership and they go into every one of our businesses and do the Google Street View on the interior. Just because that it really increases tourist activity when people are coming from out of state and they can see what's in the space, not just to read a title and a Facebook page, but they can see what's in the space. So there's a list of some of the benefits. There are a lot more, but we do have actual bullet points of what we provide. Yeah.
So Chad Pritchard was saying that he came to Downtown Provo because of DPI. And to me, finding out what businesses would be complementary.
Yes.
And then going out and recruiting them, bringing them into an empty storefront, that's a huge win.
Right. Yeah. And a huge need we have downtown right now is entertainment. I think we have a pretty good amount of restaurants. And we should have more restaurants, but we can't until we get more entertainment. We need more of a reason for people to come downtown and hang out, and then they'll eat. And I think if we can boost that entertainment side of things, we're going to get more restaurants. So entertainment-wise, that's why we're so excited to put a lot of energy behind this virtual reality thing. It's done really well. It's brought in some people, some new faces. And I think that as they come down and they hang out with virtual reality or right next door in the Dry Bar Comedy Club, they're more likely to spend money at a restaurant. And so we've been putting together these giveaway packages with the Dry Bar Comedy, Oregano, different restaurants so that they can have a discount at Rockwell Ice Cream, Pioneer Book, a restaurant, and a free ticket to Dry Bar Comedy. So we're trying to sort of create a night out downtown. And right now, one of our pain points is entertainment. We've worked a lot in the past little while with the Provo Film Society. They want a theater on Center Street more than anything. And we've tried to purchase that building right next to them, the Matt Baker parcel. And we just haven't been able to come up with a deal yet, but we're working on it. But the need right now is entertainment downtown. Yeah.
You talked earlier about an assessment, splitting that with the parking program. So that would be putting money towards the parking program?
So that's down the road. We haven't drafted it yet, but the thought we have and what we're working towards is as we grow confidence from the business owners and from the community, we would love it if, we want to put together an assessment where that funding can be split between the parking program and DPI.
Interesting, because there's other cities that we've been looking at. The parking program actually is a revenue generator rather than.
Right. Through enforcement and stuff, there's absolutely ways to generate money for that. But I think there's a lot of need right now because, to be honest, parking in Provo has been crappy for a long time. And it's largely poor signage, inconsistent signage, weird rules at different places. There's not a consistent sweeping plan. And to make that happen, I know that they have some budget, but it's going to be more than that to make a sweeping plan for the entirety of the city. But I think that that's a good question for Matt later on. I'm just teeing him up, so. But yeah, that's a good question for Matt later on. We would love to just have more funding to have a sweeping, effective, and efficient system. It's a matter of proper signage and raising awareness. Right now in Provo, we have this issue where everyone thinks they should be able to park right in front of the restaurant they like for the rest of their life. But the news flash is we're not a small town. We're not a small town anymore, and we just need them to realize when they throw a fit because they can't park out in front, there's a giant parking lot behind most of those buildings and they don't even know it. And as we raise the awareness, that will become the norm, and everyone will realize when they drive to Salt Lake, they walk 3 blocks. When they go to Provo, it's okay if they walk 1. So. Anything else? Chad's not even here. Isn't he next?
We've had to juggle schedules around a little bit,
Okay.
so
All right.
he'll be later in the program.
Okay. I think I'm done. Okay.
Just a comment. Not really a question or comment. I feel like we've heard more today than I personally heard the 3.5 years that I've been on the council for, as far as just actively trying to bring businesses into the downtown, and that kind of synergy, I think, is going to lift all boats. I think these businesses will benefit, and we've heard a lot in the past about this many Facebook likes and this many, and a new app, and then you don't hear anything about it after that, like the downtown app, and I feel like I like the energy, I like the effort, and I guess we'll see
If I can do it
in the
right?
next year if you can actually deliver. but
You'll hear a little bit later too about some of the recruitment efforts that Chad and Quinn have been involved with together, and that synergy of bringing the city person in who can help grease the skids and get the permits done. And,
Some
and that
things I
sort of
can't
thing.
say.
And,
You
yeah,
can.
and so again, it's been a great partnership, and you'll hear a little bit more about that this afternoon.
Thank you very much. I really felt the energy as well, and was excited about some of the things you were talking about there, including the synergy. Let's move on to, we're skipping item number 3 for the moment due to Dixie's schedule, so we're moving on to item number 4, which is a proposal from the Rules Committee regarding minutes policy. We have a kind of an opportunity due to new state law to perhaps do some things a little differently and save some time. Mr. Jones?
Sure.
That's so.
Yeah, so this came up in a discussion with the Rules Committee, and it really, the trigger behind bringing it up was a change in state law. So there was a bill passed just in this last session that added a paragraph to the state code regarding the minutes for open meetings. So just to put that into some context, the old code and the code still says that these are what must be included in minutes of a meeting: the date, time, and place of a meeting, the names of members present and absent, the substance of all matters proposed, discussed, or decided, which may include a summary of comments made by members of the public body, but it doesn't necessarily need to. A record by individual member of each vote taken by the public body, the name of each person who is not a member but after being recognized provides testimony and comments, the substance in brief of the testimony or comments provided, and any other information that's a record of the proceedings. So that's what the state code has said for quite a while about what should be in the minutes. And cities vary pretty widely about what they consider to be the substance of the matter proposed. I mean, some cities, basically the title of the item is enough to say that the substance of what was proposed is the title of the resolution or the title of the ordinance. And then they just record the vote that was taken on it, almost like the summary of action that council staff currently provides. And others go into a lot more detail. And like I said, even under the old code, comments made by members of the body are something that may be included, but they've never been required to be included. Well, so the new change did this. It says A public body may satisfy the requirement under, and it names two specific sections. And those are the sections that talk about the substance of the matters proposed and discussed, including potentially the summary of comments made by members of the public body, and the section that requires the substance in brief of the testimony or comments provided by those people who are not members of the public body. So the two requirements the two sections that require the summary of comments, it says you may satisfy that requirement by maintaining a publicly available online version of the minutes that provides a link to the meeting recording at the place in the recording where the matter is proposed, discussed, or decided, where the testimony or comments are provided. So under state law, it's no longer necessary to include any summary at all of the comments or discussion of an item, as long as you have an available video recording, audio recording of the meeting, and your minutes includes links to where those discussions take place. So the Rules Committee discussed that a little bit and basically just decided, hey, let's go to the council and ask for some input on this. Janine and Amanda are both here. They probably have some comments about what it looks like for them, but we did have Elizabeth prepare leadership, and the Rules Committee asked Elizabeth to prepare a couple of alternative versions. So if you can put those up, Bryce, these are from the June 20th meeting, and we've got one version that includes kind of our current method of doing business, and it's only for the first two agenda items, and it's about 3 pages long. And according to Elizabeth's notes here, it took about 1 hour and 15 minutes to prepare that item, that summary of the 2 agenda items. The other one, which would just kind of more comport with what's now allowed under state law, is about 1.25 pages long, and according to Elizabeth's notes, took about 30 minutes to prepare. So,
and Brian, I would say about 15 of each of that. So the common denominator is just, it takes as much time as it takes to put all the hyperlinks in. You go into YouTube and copy that exact moment of the video. So that
right.
kind of takes up a certain amount of time, and then beyond that, it's yeah.
So there's a total amount of time. There's savings from the total amount of time. There's also savings from the incremental amount of time, right? So, I mean, I did some quick statistics, and so if you compare 30 minutes to 1 hour and 15 minutes just for those 2 agenda items, that's a savings of 60% of the staff time. But if you actually then consider that putting the hyperlinks in both versions takes 15 minutes of that, then you're really comparing 15 minutes to 1 hour of time, which is a 75% saving in staff time between the 2 versions. So here's the one version that looks kind of like how we would prepare them under our current system, where we summarize all the comments. And then Bryce, if you can flip over and show them the other one. And notice that we do have the links even in that one, but here's so this one is what it would look like if we changed it a little bit and merely just reported what the topic was about with a link to the video. We talked in Rules Committee, I just have like 1 more minute of comments. We talked in Rules Committee about some of the pros and cons. One con in my mind from a legal perspective about our current method is that there's a presumption that the approved minutes are the official record of the meeting. That gives them, in my mind, perhaps some undue weight, where they are merely a summary, and summaries are subject to interpretation of the person listening and the person reviewing. And that in a legal battle, that presumption could always be rebutted by referring to the actual recording. But in many ways, I like having the recording be the more official, the thing that gets turned to for seeing what was actually said. The other issue that has come up a few times is that when you turn your minutes into a more expanded summary, then it starts to open up those interpretation questions, right? And the purpose of minutes is to be a record of what happened, not a record of what you intended to happen. So if you're including a summary of everybody's statements and your summary of your statement is completely not what you intended to say, but it is what you actually said, then that's actually what ought to be in the minutes, even if that's not what you wanted to say. Whereas if you go with a recording rather than a summary, then you've got context to it. Somebody who actually wants to go see what was said is going to actually hear the intonation and see the context, and it's much more likely that they're going to recognize that that error was in fact an error and not what you were intending. And then there's, and this is just, I guess the final comment is what Elizabeth has shown us as far as preparation time is recognize that that's just preparation time. That's not even taking into account then your time in reviewing them, and then staff time in reviewing your review, and then your time in reviewing staff's review of your review, right? And it just escalates and goes on from there. So the Rules Committee just wanted to bring this to the council and have a discussion about thoughts.
I would want to point out one more thing, and Amanda and Janine might be able to, they might have the same experience, but I think too, the added benefit of the proposed format, which is kind of a distilled version of what's happened with hyperlinks, it would have a much quicker turnaround time. Because right now I know when we have, for example, a week where there's a lot of meetings, it takes longer and longer to get caught up on minutes from previous meetings. So that would be the other benefit of the proposed format, would be a quicker turnaround time for minutes ready for approval.
And as has been mentioned, so there's kind of two parts of this. One is during work meeting, which of course Elizabeth usually handles, and then in our public meeting we have the city reporter that handles it. So we thought it'd be good to hear from Janine and Amanda their thoughts on this and how much time this might save and that sort of thing.
You know, this is, it will really save a lot of time. I know that I spend a lot of hours working on minutes, but I think the biggest thing is it's really hard because minutes are subjective. Because when I'm listening and I'm trying to summarize what's being said as opposed to do it verbatim, I'm summarizing what I'm hearing, which might not, which everyone's own perception is different. It might not be what they really wanted to say or how they said it. And so I think that's the biggest difference, is by allowing and giving those links, people can hear the actual discussion and watch the discussion and hear what was actually said. And it gives them a better and a clearer picture and understanding of what was discussed.
I agree with that. I agree with everything that Brian said. He said it perfectly. I relayed today this morning via email that the last set of minutes from June 6th took me about 16 hours to prepare. And a lot of that is because we get interrupted. I don't know how Elizabeth does it, being at a front counter. But when you're interrupted and you're having to pause the video and pause your thought and give your attention to the person who you're helping, that can be challenging. It would be very helpful.
Why do you have someone who's analog and wants a written copy of what actually transpired?
Well,
you transcribe that and sell it to them?
Well, if you're talking about members of the public, right, and if somebody say came in and wanted a grandma request, filed a grandma request, our only obligation is to turn over the record that we have. So what I would say is we'd give them the recording and they can go hire a transcriber if they want it transcribed.
So I have questions about the recordings, because the recordings don't need to be kept as long as the written.
No, actually, the audio recordings must be kept permanently, and they are the official record.
Okay, so
the video recordings
is
don't have to be
10
kept
years
forever.
or 5 years or
It's
something?
determined. I think it's determined by the city retention schedule, right? So the city actually has control over how long they keep the video, but the audio has to be kept forever.
Forever. So we'll have audio will be available forever, and there's a link to the audio.
The link right now is to the video.
Okay, so but
The audio is available through the state public noticing website.
And if we do go with this, then our video will be permanent because they're considered part of the record and part of the minutes. And so we would just have to make sure that we can keep it in a format that can be updated as, you know, as new technology comes along.
So if it's on YouTube, how do we ensure that YouTube keeps it for us in perpetuity? And I guess that's my.
And that was the question I asked Brett, because we're, the next item is doing an OnBase video portion as opposed to using YouTube. And Brett didn't seem to think it was gonna be a problem.
To do it on OnBase?
To do it in
What's
YouTube.
On YouTube?
Yeah, he didn't seem to think it was a problem.
What if they go out of business? What if they go, I mean, I should
We
say that.
still
Well, I guess the what ifs are
We
always.
still have those videos, the YouTube videos, up until that point. So if they went out of business, then we would have to look at something else.
I'm assuming without
So they're
actually knowing this,
storing
that we're uploading the videos to
Yes, we are.
YouTube, but keeping a copy of
Yes.
the one.
Okay.
And that's part of the discussion we have when we talk about the next part, that we won't necessarily spend time on, but that's part of the question we talk about in the background is, where are those records kept? And it's my understanding the city keeps the records right now, even though they're also up on the YouTube website.
So then the other question I have about recordings is that we often get complaints that people can't hear. I can't hear, I can't see, or I can't. So, how do we provide that when there's not good recording, and they can't hear anything? How do they get the actual content of the meeting?
Yeah, and I understand that has been a real problem in the past. And I know occasionally it happens down in the council chambers, more up here than in the council chambers. And that's why when you have the YouTube and the recording, sometimes they cancel out and they back up each other. But there will be times when the YouTube channel, doesn't catch everything. And in those circumstances, we would have to do a more detailed minutes if the video does not catch it, or the audio isn't that well. That could, I don't know,
I think that's a real problem, because I had the opportunity to listen in Orlando when I was with the Power Board, and this side of the table was really hard to hear. And I don't know if we're gonna have to look into better microphones for this meeting, especially the council chambers seem to be a little better. But it was in here that it became very difficult for me to follow, especially for some reason this side of the room.
You could have a mic for everyone.
Well, and we've been working on this for how many years in here? So that's the problem, is every year this has been a concern, and every year it's still a concern. And so that's, I think we need to fix that before we.
I think that's important that we fix this. Otherwise, there were things that I just had a hard time hearing 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Now, my understanding, because we did discuss that in our committee meeting, Janine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I raised that question. My recollection is that the response was that even when the transmission isn't working perfectly, that we haven't had those same problems with the actual audio recording. Is that right, for the most part?
Yes, I want to say that with hesitation, because if the mics are not working, it doesn't matter if it's the video or the audio, it's just not going to work. But there have been times when the video hasn't worked, but we've been able to capture it on the audio. And where's, channel 17 has had a problem with, starting the recording or getting the recording going. We still had the audio as backup.
Haven't there been times where we've done two audio captures kind of redundant? We had the little kind of handheld one, but then also kind of the system one.
That was before we had the ceiling microphone and the current system where we're tapping into the same audio for video and audio recording. So it should ideally sound exactly the same, and it should be the same in the chambers as well. They're receiving the same audio feed.
So we just need to be extra careful that before we start, that the main system is working,
right?
Sound check kind of thing.
Right.
Sure.
We check that. One of the problems with having this ceiling microphone is each person that talks or each rustling of a lunchbox, it attracts the microphone's there, and then if someone else speaks on the other side, it takes kind of a second to reset. I think the only way to get away from that is to have individual microphones.
And that is a problem when people are eating, when we are having lunch during our meeting, it's really hard to hear what's going on, because there is a lot of extra
rustling noises going on, it's really hard.
I would really be interested in hearing the meeting that you just had on the board, because it was hard at certain times in here, and if we can't hear them,
actually
then
link to it right now.
I'd be,
This one right here?
Go
I
to
don't know if you have sound.
Oh.
I can't see the corner here. We have sound.
but it was, I had a hard time hearing the mayor when he would speak, when he was sitting right here.
You know what, it may not be on this link here, let's close this down for a second here. Go to any other,
When you mentioned the videos becoming a permanent part of the record then of the minutes, we are backing up the regular evening council meetings, but we're not backing up, we haven't been backing up the work meetings because they're not the official record. So we just put them there as long as YouTube wants to entertain us for free. So if it is something we need to retain, we're gonna have to come up with a plan for that.
And I'm not seeing that we need to do this right now, but it would be interesting to see if we're gonna make it this way, if we are gonna use this, and have we got plans to go forward with this with better sound? I mean, if we've been working on it for a couple of years, yes, we've got this microphone. Are we looking further? Was this supposed to take care of the issue for us? Or is there more?
It's supposed to help. One of the things that we could use is more mics, and we looked into the cost, and we opted to hold off on getting one for everything, because for some reason, mics, the way this system is set up and the mics have to interact, we end up spending a ridiculous amount of money on mics, like about several $100 per mic. I don't.
Official records, that's not a lot of money.
yeah, it's not.
And we have 2 now, 3 more would be less than 1,000, 5 more.
I think it was like $1,400 or $1,700 or something for a few more.
I think I'd be working on it. So we go this ground.
I do sound systems with the church, and they're up to about $45,000 to redo the sound system in the chapel. And it used to be $25,000, but now with all the internet stuff, it's just going crazy. But yeah, $200 for a mic is nothing. $1,000 an amp, $5,000. I mean, it's just.
It's probably less than 16 hours of a man's time.
I'm thinking of constituents that regularly look at the minutes. They'll look at minutes from 10 years ago, or they'll look at and they can, if they can access them on their own. If they can't, then they have to go to the recorder. And so does that save you time if you have citizens stopping your day to ask you to retrieve something or to get them the recording for something? I mean, how much time do you spend doing that as opposed to doing the minutes in the first place?
The ideal thing is when we have grammar requests for minutes, we would send them the electronic version for minutes, which have the links attached. And so now the previous minutes, they obviously don't have them, but going forward, we would have the links attached to the minutes. So I would send it to them electronically. They would pull it up, go to the item they want to look at, click on that link, and then they can hear the whole discussion. And I think that was the goal of the state legislature, is to make sure that that the discussion is available without having to put so much pressure on having the written minutes reflect what's actually stated in the meeting. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's hard. Yeah.
And I just go back to Janine's earlier point, though, that moving to this method doesn't do away with the obligation to actually provide the material. So to Janine's point, even if the council said, let's do this, let's start tomorrow, anytime your concern actually came to fruition and there was a recording that was not good enough, that didn't cut the mustard, then Janine would have to do the summary, right? Because those things would still be required by state statute. You only fulfill the state statute by providing the video if the video actually is sufficient. So you might end up, even if you said, hey, let's just start, you might end up at times with some kind of hybrid minutes, depending on the quality of the video. But in order to meet the state statute, we'd still have either a summary or the video available for everybody.
One of the things we discussed in the committee is what exactly is capturing the substance of the conversation. And I feel like even over my 18 months on the council, the detail that is captured in the minutes has grown. I don't know if that's what others have felt. There's times we all review the minutes, we all review the summary actions from the planning commission, but there's times where I really appreciate the way that they do that, where here are the 4 things that were discussed by the commissioners, and it's a lot more brief, a lot more summary of what it captures the substance, but without all of the details and whatnot. And in the committee, we talked about how it's really just been the council's preference, and sometimes some councils want more detail there, some councils want less detail in there. So I think, and that was one of the things that we talked about. We were trying to find, do we want to recalibrate what level we're doing, and that's when the new law was passed, and we decided to look at going the all video way. But there's times where I feel like I'm reviewing the minutes, not so much that to remind myself what was talked about, but more like there's so much detail in here. Do I need to catch anything that was done? That was mistaken. There was one there that I was reading. I'm like, wow, either I really misspoke or I just contradicted myself in the same paragraph here. But was it worth bringing up to ask for that to be changed? I spend a lot of time, and I don't feel like it's really value added. It's more proofreading than it is getting value out of it. And so the times where I have wanted to go back to an item to either I missed it or I wanted to review what was said and whatnot, I have found the videos to be very helpful, and I can do that a lot. It's just I find more value in the video anyway. And so however we move forward, I think I would like to see some changes from our practice.
So I find it a little bit onerous to have to go through the video to find exactly where, unless it's time-stamped and this is this item and it's time-stamped right there, and you can go directly to it. I find it super onerous to try and find it, in a video. And I also find it onerous to try to find meeting minutes using our search engine that the city currently has. I never use that. I always go to the meeting, the actual public documents, and go to that meeting and click on the minutes from that meeting, because I can never find it in the search. I'll put in, 20 different things to try and search it, and maybe I'm just doing it wrong, but if I can't get it, then I don't think the average citizen is going to spend that much time trying to find a document through our regular city search engine. And so that's why I always, but I have the benefit of knowing, which meeting I'm looking for, and I'll go through public documents, and I don't think the citizens know about, some do, but not everyone knows that you can go to public documents and find that. And so I just think whatever we do, it needs to be way easier for the average citizen to find it and to retrieve the video or retrieve the audio, and it should be simple. They shouldn't have to fill out a grandma request. I don't think they should have to fill out a grandma request and take it more of your time to find that. It should just be accessible somehow on the website where it's just a couple of clicks and they have it.
I agree, and that's one of the things that we will be working on is updating our website, because I know the city recorder, the problem is you have the city recorder and then you have the council, and so you have work meetings on one, council meetings, regular council meetings on another web page, and so you're searching all over trying to find things. And that's one thing that we really kind of need to consolidate, is have one page for people to go, like you say, one click, council meetings, go to it, and you can give a list of them. If we provide a link to the public documents, that might help, but I agree 100%. We need to make that more clear.
And my understanding with what Elizabeth prepared is that these, if you go to the proposed one instead, Bryce, these would be in exactly the same place where the minutes currently are, and the timestamp would be a link to the video, so you would not have to go anywhere else.
And the link is, not only is it a link to the video, but it is a link to that moment of the video. So those times, it will go to 21 minutes and 7 seconds when that item starts. Because YouTube gives you the ability to copy a link to a precise time.
Okay. And I guess just as long as it works and you can hear it,
because that's what I'm hearing from constituents that use it a lot,
they're frustrated. Well, I went to the video, but I couldn't hear anything. Or and why isn't there more information in the minutes? Because you can actually read meeting minutes at your own pace and you can cruise through them quickly and find what you want to find. Whereas sometimes the video just is so onerous to find it in the video. It's just very time consuming to do that. For me, it's time consuming when I'm trying to go back. And this morning I didn't have time to do that, on the current minutes, just to make sure that it reflected what I felt happened in the meeting. And so, anyway, and I agree. I don't want to sit and read an hour's worth of, or 2 hours worth of meeting minutes either. But I want to make sure they're accurate. If I'm voting for them, I'm going to make sure they're accurate. So I'll spend the time to do that. And if that helps our constituents know a little better what's happening, then I'm fine doing that. But if there's a better way, and it's a foolproof way, so it's not like we're just having this short summary of action type minutes, and then they have a link and they can't get the link. And they can't get the video, and then they're frustrated. That's just not transparent. So that's what I worry about.
So one of the things that would be helpful for me is not just a link of this is where the item starts, but there's often a staff presentation, maybe neighborhood chair, public comment, and finally it comes back to the council. And if there was a link for those where you could say, well, I just want to watch presentation from staff, or I want to see what the neighborhood had to say, or I want to hear what the council had to say, then you can just jump to those points in the, could be 2-hour discussion. And, first half might have been with the public, and finally it gets around to just the council. And so those breakpoints are important if you're trying to research and understand a subject where you don't want to just sit there for an hour trying to go, well, when is it going to get to what I want to hear? Well, part of what I want to hear is in the council speaking or the neighborhood.
Well, if you can go down to the toolbar, you can kind of watch a little bit and see when the neighborhood chair.
This is true. If you want to drag it through there.
Yeah, so it's possible to do that.
If I may, this might actually be a good segue into the next presentation, and I'll just kind of give you an overview of where, you've seen where we are and a discussion about what to do with the minutes, but around October, we're expecting OnBase, which is the successor to Aspire, to come online, and no doubt we'll have some glitches as we try and work our way through it. But there's some features in that new program that are going to make life easier for Elizabeth and the reporters in terms of setting up minutes and agenda, and their staff doing agendas and that. But there's also an element of there's an aspect that we want to entertain. We haven't worked out all of the details yet around this. We haven't got a recommendation for it, but we want to show you a little bit of what's possible with the new program.
Great, and that'll be our next agenda item. Just one last question. Are there any council members that haven't spoken on this, that have any feedback for the rules committee as we sort of try to digest what we've heard today on this item?
As I reviewed it from our information about the city discussion today, I supported it. If we can get some of those details with that.
One other too is to have someone who didn't attend the meeting read it or listen to it, not read it, but listen to the recording or part of it. I don't know if that's possible, but I think when you attended the meeting, you may hear because you were there and you know what they're talking about, but if it's someone just listening cold, they might not really get the essence of what's going on in the video because they weren't there, they didn't hear. Does that make sense? So it might be helpful just to have occasionally, I don't know, have somebody who didn't attend the meeting listen to it and see if they can grasp what happened to it. It's just a suggestion.
Double check. All right, any other comments before we move on? Thank you very much. We'll discuss this some more in the rules committee and figure out where to go from there. So let's move on to item number 5, Mr. Stratton.
Okay, so forgive me for sitting here for this part. This is so hard to see from back here.
hide. Sorry.
Don't hit the high?
No, don't do what you were about to do. I know.
How do you close it?
Right.
Just go to the folder. And then, links for OnBase presentation, third one down.
Oh, third. Yeah, okay. So this is where it's starting to.
So we came in here earlier today and this works, so can we take our break right now and just come back? Because we had these up and they were working.
So it's hard to do this with an
I'll do this real quick. Yeah, we tested everything at 8:30.
Well, the other option is, I think economic development is here. Should we move it with them?
Sure. Come back. Over here. Come back.
big control and like this come up.
They have a PowerPoint, so.
Okay, there you go. Okay. All right. So the new system is coming on. Let's see if we get this to work this time. Okay. What this is doing is just telling you, unfortunately, we don't seem to have the audio now. This is telling you the back end of it, but we'll skip this piece and just move into, I think you've seen as you clicked in some of the minutes that we can go and see the YouTube videos. But if you go to the Provo, City of Provo website, to get there, this link here will take you to the agendas and minutes. And currently, you don't have a link to the videos. Under the proposal that Brian was talking about, the new minutes would then have a link within them. But right now, people wanted to watch our meetings. Okay. You actually go to YouTube, you pick a meeting, and you've seen us pull them up before, and you can watch. This is our budget retreat. You can actually watch the videos, and we manually go in and add these links later on to show you where we are on the agenda. And if you want to watch them, you can do that. One of the availabilities with the new software, and this is Wasatch County. Wasatch County's got it, and we're still trying to work out some of the details and the issues like costs. But Wasatch County's meetings, you can go right in and watch the video right with the agenda and link with the minutes and things like that. So this is one of the features that's available with the OnBase that we can use to supplement our minutes and improve our presentation and have one-stop shopping, so to speak, in terms of where the records are. The cost of this addition here right now is about $8,000 and about $1,600 a year. I'm willing to go talk to them and see if they can drop some of that cost, especially on the upfront cost. But we're not all aligned yet in terms of how to make this work and whether it's a better option than the extra steps we're taking now. But that's the future, I think, of where these programs are going for minutes and records. And this is in the new version of this year's version. It's getting better year to year with the OnBase project. This screen is actually a little bit confusing in this light. This camera is actually focused on the council, and this is on the audience. So you can see both. But that's Wasatch County's using it. We've got more exploration to do, and we just wanted to give you a sense of where it can go. And Jenny, where your feedback is. I think we're still stuck on trying to make sure that we're happy with the way the minutes get presented.
One thing I like about this, or how we move forward, if we have the documents, particularly the ones that aren't even to be, or that are presented in the meeting, to have them available,
And see, there's your documents, right?
early on would be great.
Here's your document that's being displayed. Right now, if we do it on the old version of Sire, which is several years old, obviously, if you want to do this, you got to open up the screen, you got to pull up another document, you got to pull up the next document. It's really cumbersome.
And that's only on the ones that were ready, the Thursday before or whatever, at least before the council. All of the handouts that we get or the presentations that are given. Right now we're waiting, or in the past we've been waiting almost to the point that after the minutes have been approved, months and months later, are those documents available to the public. So.
More recently, we've been uploading them soon after.
Yes, yeah. So just recently we've done that. So to further integrate that, I think would be another good step forward.
The problem with the current system is if you try to link to one of those documents, they're not permanent links. They expire like a day later.
Right. And so there's some technical issues that we need to understand as a staff before we can come to you with a recommendation to spend the extra money to do this. But I think that this is where this programs are going. I think more and more cities are going in this direction, and it's something we've got to look at. What we've got as a system right now is actually pretty good when you compare us to other cities. And we're not all, like I say, we're not all 100% on where we want to go with this as a staff, but this I think is the future, and whether it's this iteration or the next iteration or the next upgrade, or whatever, somewhere down the road, I think you'll end up with a system like this.
You may have had a comment.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but Utah Public Notice website, the state also requires us to post the minutes and all handouts and the audio on the Utah Public Notice webpage. And so all of those documents that you were speaking about, Dave, that are handed out during the meeting are also posted on that webpage. And we try and get those up within a day or two after the meeting, and then the minutes are posted after they're approved. So that's another option.
And the big challenge I think that remains is the one that Mrs. Santiago brought up was this issue of how do you search for some of these documents? Because on the public meeting website, it's not easy. You don't know what meeting you're going to and what item you're looking for. You don't know it. The systems are getting better, and it's just taking time. But we're moving in that direction now.
The other challenge that will be solved with just moving to OnBase in general, the public access portal and Sire has a lot of limitations regarding what file types are used, and so minutes, you can only upload a Word document. So none of the supporting documents can even be uploaded as minutes to a previous meeting. They can only be uploaded on the PMN. But some of those issues are just inherently, they're fixing those in OnBase. So regardless, we'll have a better.
So I read with interest item number 2. We had Scott Loomis come down and talk to us. Community Housing Trust, newly completed affordable housing assessments. And then they're looking at changing their affordable housing code. That's an item I'd love to know more about.
So there's the link. So Brian, were you looking for the item you had on the minutes? Were you looking for some direction from council on where to go with that?
I wasn't personally. I think the Rules Committee just wanted to have a discussion. My recollection is the Rules Committee just wanted to have a discussion and get feedback so that they could then go back and discuss it in Rules Committee and come back with a recommendation for action. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you. I think we got what we needed unless anyone has more comments on that. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item number 3. Now we're backing up to a presentation regarding the development efforts in Downtown Provo. And we'll turn this over to you.
I think as Dix and Chad are starting, let me just give an introduction. As we neared the end of our budget process this year, we heard loud and clear the concerns that have been expressed about economic development and measurable outcomes and those kinds of things. And so in our process of trying to define what to do next to give the council the best information we could, we made an attempt at trying to replicate a little bit what we did with the water system. And that was to create several opportunities to sort of segment the different functions of economic development and spend 30 to 45 minutes in 4 different work sessions to dive a little deeper into those. And so what you'll be hearing today is the first of 4 summaries. And so today we're going to talk about our efforts downtown, building the economy downtown.
We'll subsequently be spending time on Mountain Vista. We'll spend some time on the entrepreneurship and startup efforts, and then we'll be wanting to do a little longer discussion about retail. And we've talked with Cliff about setting up what we've been calling a retail roundtable, where we'll bring not only our staff, but also some retail brokers from Salt Lake City, some of our local retail folks like the Mall and the Mix and Riverwoods, and potentially bring our retail strategies consultant back that did our retail strategic plan a couple of years ago, and just kind of have an opportunity to sit around this table and have a 2 to 3 hour conversation about retail in Provo, and give you the opportunity to the people that we work with all the time in the retail world, and just get a sense of where we're at, what's possible, what we should be doing better, what we, whatever, but just try to respond to the ongoing concern as we begin to shift, or as we continue our shift of focus from job creation, more job creation, less retail, to more retail, less job creation. As we begin that migration, what does that look like, and what can we reasonably expect? So that's kind of the 4 meeting cycle we're talking about. Next week we'll also have the redevelopment agency in. Dave Walter will come in and do a deep dive into how the redevelopment agency works, and tax increment financing and some of those kind of things. So again, this is the first of 4, and we thought it was probably opportune to talk about downtown today, given that we had Quinn Peterson coming in talking about the private sector initiative with downtown. Now, how does the public sector merge into that? So that's just to kind of set the stage for today's discussion.
Well, thank you, Wayne, for that introduction, and thank you, Council, for the opportunity to speak and discuss more about what we do. Today's a special day in the retail world. It's 7-Eleven Day, so it's not only Cow Appreciation Day at Chick-fil-A, but also Free Slurpee Day. So if that wasn't on your radar, afterwards you can go get some free swag and some free food. So once again, my name is Chad Thomas. I'm with the Provo City, our Mayor's Office of Economic Development, and I'm a business development coordinator, and with my emphasis in the downtown. And unfortunately, apparently your video or sound isn't working very well, so we'll skip the video portion. I was going to show you a video. We produce some videos along with Channel 17, working hand in hand with them to promote some of our downtown businesses and other businesses in downtown. One cool thing about the video that we recently put out yesterday at about 5 o'clock was Sweet's Hawaiian Grill, which is just off Columbia Lane. It's only been out for less than 24 hours, and it's already had close to 6,000 views on it. And I'll talk more about that later, how that actually came to fruition. But it's a really good example of what our department does on the fringes to really help our small and local businesses. So what I do is really kind of divided into 3 different categories. One is to promote and support business activity through business attraction, expansion, and retention. We do try to attract businesses into the downtown actively, give people phone calls. We look for businesses that are doing well in other areas similar to Provo. A lot of like the boutique retail or more small restaurants, not necessarily like your name brand franchises or nationwide franchises, although we don't discriminate in Provo. We just definitely go after those, but those, as I mentioned, have found their niche in Provo, and so we go after those. Another one is I'm the point of contact or / liaison for all the downtown businesses. So anytime a business has a problem, usually they call my phone first, and that's Monday through Sunday. They usually give me a phone call. The last thing is just help facilitate business interactions with the cities, city departments and services. As you probably have realized, we are a bureaucracy, and sometimes it's very difficult to navigate which department they should talk to if they have an issue. And that's really my job, is if they have any issue or they want a business permit or they have a question, is I'm really that liaison and to help them navigate the world of government. And so when I go out into businesses, I really just ask 2 questions, and it's amazing all the work I get off of these 2 questions. It's really, what can we do to help your business? And 2, how can we get out of the way? The second part is really important because regulation is really a necessary part of government, and it's one of the things that we have ability to control. And from our department's point of view is we really look at regulation and seeing, are those regulations really necessary? Or are these standards that perhaps the department's asking for, is that codified in the code, or is that just something nice to have? And so we really just look at a lot of those things, and I get a ton of work just asking these two questions. One important thing to know is that a lot of people ask me all the time is, where is downtown? What is downtown? And it's important to note that downtown is more than just Center Street and University. In the downtown master plan, it gives this map where it has a couple of districts for the downtown, the Gateway, North, Downtown North, South Temple, the TOD, and what most people consider as a central business district or downtown central. Yes, sir.
And then we heard today that DPI considers maybe from the mall up to Bulldog.
Mm-hmm. So it really just depends on what you're asking, what question. A lot of times, let's say if you, like last year, if you're asking what is downtown for the downtown facade improvement program, that was very extremely limited to a geographical boundary, which was Center Street University. I actually work hand in hand also with the redevelopment agency. And for this year, moving forward, we're actually going to use this geographical boundary for the downtown facade improvement program. Now, Downtown Provo Inc. is, they're a separate entity. They are membership based. They don't have a tax assessment, unfortunately. And so I think it's probably smart for them to expand their boundaries as much as possible so they can get more people participating. But it really just depends on who you ask. But I do think it's important to note that I'm working with businesses in our department and with the programs that the council has funded. We work with a lot of businesses, not just on Center University. And so we presented a couple of weeks ago, and so I've kept the same subtitles, but then I'm just going to kind of dive deeper into what we talked about. So first is support small businesses. And I know Quinn already talked about this ribbon cutting because it was a really fun ribbon cutting. If you had a chance, hopefully you saw the, at least on our department page, we had a Facebook Live video of the of Borzen's speech during the ribbon cutting. And it was really moving to hear his conviction about why he's here in Provo and why he does the things that he does. And for me, that's, once again, I have the coolest job in the entire world. I get to work in downtown Provo, helping small businesses and really maintain that vitality. And this was a great event. So when I asked businesses, what can we do to help and how can we get out of the way? These are just two examples. One, I went over to, when VidAngel took over the Madison, went over there, introduced myself, let them know who I am, what I do, asked the two questions, and they said, hey, we're gonna have this event. Could you invite some people? And they meant, some city administrators. Sure, I can do that. I have their emails, and so that's what we did, and a lot of them were able to come out. This was a video premiere for their new commercial for Camp Chef, which is a Utah-based company, and it was hugely successful. They invited over 6 chefs to use their new Camp Chef smoker, and they had a little cook competition, and it was a really cool event, and that's what they asked for help, and that's what I did. Now, Sweets Hawaiian Grill, they asked something for completely different. When I asked them what could I do to help, they're like, we have our little niche market, but we love to just spread the love of our restaurant here in Provo. And so I working with them, worked with Channel 17. We do if you've been on the Provo City YouTube channel or even Provo Channel 17's YouTube channel, they do a little segment called P-Town with Nikki, and it's like diners, drive-ins, and dives from the Food Network. And we just go around, tour restaurants, and do the back of the house, show how food's made, and tell the backstory. And it's really fun, and it really gives exposure to these businesses that they could otherwise not afford. A good estimate is anywhere from like $1,000 to $1,500 of kind of like the value that we bring to the table, plus all the video the promotion that they get. And luckily, Provo City has spent a lot of time and resources in public outreach. And so when we post something on our Facebook page or on YouTube, people get the word. Oops. Another one, just talking with the Mighty Baker. Pete over at the Mighty Baker, he just won. He didn't tell me because he couldn't tell me because of a non-disclosure, but he knew he had won Cake Wars and he wanted to have a party to celebrate and he wanted to have a viewing party. So working with the connections that I have just helped facilitate this whole event to happen. He was able to have an event over at the startup building. The Taylors provided the venue at no cost, and he was able to have a couple hundred people over there cheering him on. All of his family was there in support. It was really a cool experience for him as well. And so that's just some of the things what I do to support businesses. And essentially it's that open-ended question, what can I do to help? And then, we just plug myself in there. Another thing that we're really focusing on in the downtown is entrepreneurship. That's no surprise. To your right, you'll see 1 million cups, and you're probably familiar with that. Another thing is the Digital Media Summit that we had 2 months ago. The Taylors, because of their involvement with our department and also with the programs that the City Council has funded, the startup community is really taking off. And so they're exploring other ways to invest in the city. And one gap that they had noticed was the digital media services in Provo. And so what they did was they had this summit and they invited people from all over Utah, and people from all over Utah came with about 100 attendees. And we were just talking about how can we capitalize on this social capital that we have in content creation. And they broke off into specific categories of, like script writing, post-production, pre-production. And then the city's interest was, what can we do to help facilitate that development? Not necessarily take it over or control it, but what can we do to leverage that or incentivize it so that way it can be a catalyst for development, just like the startup building is. Another thing that we do in the downtown is encourage investment. One thing, as I mentioned, was the Downtown Facade Improvement Program, working with the businesses, letting them know that they have options to encourage additional investment, because the Downtown Investment Program is a kind of a leveraging grant, so it incentivizes businesses to invest in their building. We also we sponsor or push through additional signage opportunities in the downtown. As I mentioned before, we really work on business recruitment, and we like I said, we really focus on businesses that we think that would do well in the downtown. We actively are trying to fill vacancies and backfill spaces. So when Gloria's Italian Kitchen or Little Italy was going out of business, our department knew about that for about 4 months beforehand. We knew there were some issues going on, and so we were actively working with the broker and the landowner to say, hey, what's going on? Do you need any help? Are there specific restaurants that you're looking at, or you want to continue with the restaurant? And then a month before, we knew exactly what was happening, and we were actively pursuing tenants. And so we're in conversations with that broker to know, are there LOIs or letters of intent on that space? And so we really try to be active in pursuing those. Filling vacancies, we send all the requests. A lot of people look for space in the downtown, and so what I do is just help facilitate those conversations. When someone calls and says, "Hey, I would really like to be in downtown Provo," I put them in touch with the brokers, the real estate agents, to let them know, like, hey, this person's looking for space. One of them is the new karaoke space that's going over in the Heart and Soul. There's a Heart and Soul karaoke over on 52 West Center. That's the Lotus Garden. Lotus Garden. So Lotus Garden used to take up a full space, full building, and now they've moved into half of that. And now there's going to be 2 businesses where there was 1. It'll be a great addition to downtown. And as I think Quinn mentioned, one thing that we do lack in downtown Provo is additional entertainment opportunities. So this would be another great reason for people to come to Provo as a destination, not just a drive-through or a one-stop shop. And backfill spaces, we're always looking at, as even Quinn mentioned before, we're talking with current tenants and making sure that, hey, how long you guys plan on staying? Is everything good? Is there anything that we can do to help? So these are kind of the 3 things that we do to help investment. Another thing we do is protect investment, and this one is really difficult because we have different types of users in our downtown. Provo City is very unique. I like to say that it's unique because we're the only urban downtown in Utah County. And we have a multi-million-dollar company right in the heart of downtown. We have a LDS temple. We have small businesses, and trying to accommodate all their needs is sometimes can be difficult. And I'm sure as a council you've seen that firsthand. And it's our job and mandate is to protect their investment. They've built, and it's our job to say how can we protect that investment. One thing that always comes up, and I can talk about various issues about protecting investment, but one is always materializes as parking. So this is I was on Center Street about two months ago. They were doing some resurfacing and redoing the sidewalk on Center Street. And as soon as that dump truck pulled up, my phone blew up. I had like 10 businesses like, what is going on? And this is usually is one of the biggest nightmares for a business in downtown. As you can see, they've roped off about 5 or 6 stalls, which is important to them. And so our department always looks at from the lens of the business. How are these occurrences in the downtown affecting businesses? And parking is usually a big pain point, or can be a pain point for downtown businesses. And so everything from BRT construction, working with the management team, the Provo Trip team, the contractor, to ensure that we are getting every space possible back that that they'll take away on the construction route. Making sure that the businesses know that even though we are losing some spaces on universities, that it's going to be striped, and so it's actually they're actually going to be finally have the opportunity to maximize that parallel parking. Another one example is on 400 West. 400 West. Last year they did an improvement on the streetscape. It looks beautiful, right? They have bulb outs, and everything looked great except one thing: they forgot to put in the 2-hour parking signs. So I was walking around and I asked one business and I said, "Hey, what can I do to help you?" And they said, "We would love to get that 2-hour parking back." And I said, "No, we can do that." And just working through the bureaucracy of government helped facilitate that conversation. Now they have 2-hour parking back, and they're extremely grateful. Startup Crossing, working with planning and zoning, economic development, and also some property owners over at the startup block to really identify how we can best manage that parking situation. Since Startup Crossing is really the first true TOD development in that area, it's going to cost some pay points until we actually get BRT down there. And so working with them to see, how can we incentivize people to take one car. It's an imperfect situation, but really having those conversations is extremely important. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so that northwest corner of that block with Startup has been converted into parking by an arrangement with the owner, and some days there's 15. I don't know if they get 20 cars in there, but that seems to be helping.
It's helped, of course. Any additional parking in downtown is a big shot in the arm. And those are just conversations that we have with people of, have you thought about this? One time they were thinking about doing a parking permit program in that area, and so we like to ask the questions and see what they come up with and see how we can help them facilitate that. And then I've already talked about Center Street. And then the last part is maintain vibrancy, and this is what I love when I said I have the coolest job. I get to stay in downtown all day. I get to see what's going on. All my family asks me, what's going on in Provo, because I live here, I work here, I eat here. And these are some just pictures that I've taken through my experiences. I love this picture over at the New Skin building. Things like that, a dinosaur, a T-Rex, costume can pop up in downtown, and you tell me how many downtowns in Utah County you would find all this to happen. Another part of the vibrancy that we really work to facilitate is this past year, at the state level, they were working on some food truck legislation. And so we worked with downtown business owners to really go over what the repercussions would have been of that, working with the senator that was proposing the bill to let them know our thoughts and feelings on that and kind of our side of the story. And this other picture is just a ribbon cutting or open house at the new Even Stevens up on near Bulldog. And these are all things that we are all important that maintain the vibrancy in downtown. And this last picture, it just really shows, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when you thought downtown Provo, would you have thought this? I think most people think this now when they think downtown Provo. And we love it. We love the attraction. We love that everybody wants to be in downtown. We get phone calls every day of people saying, I want to be in downtown Provo. How do I get office space? I want to pay $300 a month. I want to be downtown. Can I have my event in downtown? They want to be here. And from our standpoint, from economic development, is how do we maintain that vibrancy, but also not stifle the businesses that already have invested in here. When we have an event come into downtown, it has it has a ripple effect, and we just try to help businesses maximize on that vibrancy. We work with businesses every day to say, hey, there's an event downtown. What are you doing to take advantage of that? And let's put you in contact with this person. And even Quinn's a great example of a business that has taken advantage of an awesome event. And so we share these success stories and really help people in the downtown understand that this is a great place to be, and it's the best place to be in Provo. That's really the end of my presentation. I'm sure Dixon has about 20 things to say that I didn't mention, but are there any questions for me, or do you want to speak, Dixon?
I'm curious about the vacancy in our downtown area. What percentage would you consider our vacancy at this point? Maybe on Center Street and north.
So we have not done anything recently on actually counting that, but I just put that question back to you, Gary. What do you think it is?
I don't know.
In your mind's eye, as you drive down Center Street or University,
but
what do you see as far as vacancies?
I'd say you're at 85%. That's in my mind's eye.
Full.
85% full.
Yeah, I think we're higher than that.
Oh, yeah.
We can get that number. So we have on Center Street, we have 2 perennial vacancies. The Matt Baker property, which is between the Madison on the corner and no, it's not Jover's. It's going to be Tailor-Made. In 2002, that was the flag shop. It was since been, I think the Utah County Republicans used it for a brief time. Right now, there's a place in there called Virtual Reality, and if you haven't been there, we'd encourage you to go there. You can have a really mean saber fight with yourself in virtual reality. But we've talked to the gentleman there, and this probably won't come to any surprise, but the property owner there is Matt Baker, our same Matt Baker that has pigs on the west side. And Matt's a great guy, but he has some of his own visions of what he wants to do there. He tells me the story that at one time he wanted to have a video arcade in there, and he got shut down by Provo City and wasn't allowed to do it. I don't know who he talked to or when he talked to him, but he has some issues with Provo City, not just that, but so Matt has some ideas on what he wants to do. We've talked to Matt, and he's had a brokerage sign on it. We've showed the property to other people. There was a dress shop in there for a while that was actually doing quite well, but because of some family situations, they had to discontinue the shop. So there's that property on Center Street, and then the other one is across the street is the Kawakami's property. It's right across the street from the city center. The same hair weave has been there for about 20 years. And if you know the Kawakamis, they have an awesome development in American Fork. And at one time when the city was doing the center focus process, we had the Kawakamis participating. We even had the Woodbury family come down, who are partners with the Kawakamis in American Fork, and had them look at it. And Woodbury's felt that the single block was too small, being about 3.6 acres. And that the Kawakami's holdings on that property is a little less than half of the block. Paul Glauser worked quite closely with the Kawakamis and some of the other property owners, and the end result of that was the Cowboy Project. It's now open and doing quite well. So those 2 parcels have been our perennial vacancies on Center Street. There was a time when there was an individual who wanted to levy a vacancy tax. If your property was vacant,
that you would be taxed. And of course, that didn't prevail, but it was a good conversation to the extent that we're saying, how can we fill these vacant spaces? And if there's an unmotivated owner, it is a challenge to work with them, but that's been our experience. But in our mind's eye, and as you drive down Center Street, those are the two perennial vacancies. There's another vacancy on a storefront, and New Skin owns the property, and they have some stuff going on in the back end, and we would like to see them put something in the front of the store just to show something more than just black pipe and drape. But vacancies in downtown actually are very low.
And the reason I add in the storehouse, I think of the storehouse up there.
Storehouse as in Storehouse Market?
Yeah, the old Storehouse Market.
Yeah, on Freedom.
On Freedom that they're doing.
It's been a variety of uses.
And that's going through some rechanges right now. And I also think of the old furniture store, the next, what is it? It used to buy, it's blocked down from the Bill Harris. Right now, I think they're looking to do a startup type thing.
So that's the one thing that I would, on Chad talking about the audio visual, the media, the digital media, that's the Taylor's building. And right now they're under renovation and they're creating that as a social media hub for startups. It'll be called the Bright Building. And then also on the Matt Baker parcel, we're actually working with a potential our interested party and putting in an offer on that parcel. So we're actively pursuing any lead that we have. We also have to. There are also private property rights as well. So.
But I have never seen it as vibrant in Provo. I think of my office buildings. I have people lined up. I'm having a good time. It's a happy time for me because I have people that are lining up. So I'm glad to hear that we're doing.
A couple other things that we're doing in the downtown. Allison's not here with us today. She's off. But so with this brownfield grant, we've actually identified 2 parcels in the downtown that have been challenging parcels for a long time. One is called the Bradshaw Auto Piece. And it's right behind the Foxglove florist shop. And it used to be an auto repair place, hence Bradshaw Auto. And they worked through UDEQ, but came to a standstill, and the property's been sitting vacant. And it's a parcel that could be combined with something else. In fact, one of the parcels we'd like to see it combined with is what we acquired with the roasted artichoke. It's right behind there, and something could be put together there. But right now, the city is working with EPA to see if we can, again, get it off the list of questionable properties. The other one is the old dry cleaner on Freedom Boulevard, probably about 50, I guess that'd be about 50 South Freedom Boulevard, where the dry cleaner was. The city was able to use some of the brownfield grant money to get that property characterized. And while the property owner wasn't entirely excited to get the notice of how much it's going to cost to remediate the property, they now have it quantified, whereas before it was a bit of a mystery. And that's what brownfield funds are for, is to understand the nature and extent of how contaminated or how contaminated a property is not. And now they have a quantifiable number of what it's going to take to clean that property up. There's been at least 2 or 3 different property owners, developers, or interested parties doing something there. But because they knew that it was a dry cleaner, they didn't know how much it was going to cost to clean up. Now there's a number out there that people can say, okay, at least I know what to put that into a pro forma. What's it going to cost to bring this property back to a productive use? So that's another thing that we've been working on in the downtown.
Is that on the west or east side of the street?
It's on the west side of the street. It's just south of where Fat Daddy's Pizza used to be located. It was there's a house on the south end, and just right north of there is where the dry cleaner used to be located.
Thank you. So, what's the story with Fat Daddy's Pizza?
He closed. Just some restaurants don't make it. Chad right now is focusing on Chad Pritchard. I think most of you know he's pretty active in our community, especially on social media. Right now focusing on oregano. So there is another success story in our downtown that's attributable to many things, but mostly to Chad. So when he first opened up his restaurant, he was called Tamarisk up in the former TGI Friday space at the Marriott Courtyard up on Freedom. And then he relocated to probably 170 North University Avenue, near the antique shop there south of the church, the community church. He operated there for about a year, but he wanted to have a liquor license, and so he relocated around the corner is where he's at now on Center Street. If you remember on Center Street at one time, there was one food establishment. I don't necessarily, Sensuous Sandwich is not necessarily a restaurant, but it is a food establishment. At one time, Sensuous was the only restaurant on the south side of Center Street. And now if you think about it in your mind's eye, you got New Skin with Spoon, you have Sensuous Sandwich, you have Joe Vera's, you have Oregano's, you have the little Chinese restaurant, you have the restaurant here on the corner, Broke Eatery, which is kind of come and gone a couple times. It seemed to be doing well now. So there really has been a lot of a change in the uses in the downtown, but also including and adding to the vibrancy in downtown. And again, obviously, our office is not driving every one of those. In fact, we drive very little of it, but we are in contact with those businesses. We're promoting the downtown and letting people know that this is an up and coming place to be, and it's a place to be. When Chad talked about talking to businesses and other communities, we believe it is poor form to poach from one community to another, but we tell them, our lead line is, hey, if you're successful in this community, come open a second store. And so Unhinged on Center Street, it's in one of the spaces used to be occupied by Los Hermanos. Dave Oka, and some of you will remember Dave, he met with them up in Sugar House area and said, hey, you guys you're killing it up here. Why don't you come down, come check out the scene in Provo and see what that's like. And so they opened up their second location there several years ago, and now they do better than the Sugar House store. And it's a little boutique. It's kind of quirky, but it's doing well, and it adds to the vibrancy and the variety in our downtown.
Any other questions for Mr.
Pardon? A commission?
Quinn's doing a great job, and as I mentioned in the budget presentation, I think DPI right now is doing as well or as good as it's ever done, and I think with a little more runway, they're going to be able to accomplish some great things in downtown.
Dixon, he mentioned activities in the downtown. Quinn did. Do you see that becoming more and more possible in our downtown, or where are we at with that? It's a challenge with the our streets.
Yeah, events in downtown are a two-edged sword, and we've been challenged to make those as positive as possible. For those that have been to the Freedom Festival for as many years as it's been here, you'll notice that a lot of the shops are closed on the parade day. One reason for that is many of them are sole proprietors, and they want to be at the parade too. They don't have a huge depth chart, so they want to be there. Others, it's people are coming down to be at a parade. One of the challenges has been is how do we help our businesses capitalize on that? And one of the things that we've tried to convince them of is, listen, don't try to sell everything on the parade day, but get your word out of who you are and have them come back later. Give them a pass back or something that they will come back and say, you know, I was at the parade, I saw this shop, it was closed, I was here for the parade, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to explore that. I'm going to see what it's about or come patronize that business. But again, we can't legislate that they be open. And so the events that happen in the downtown, to some of the businesses, it's great. They do very well during some of the events. Others not so much, and so some of them will close. We get businesses that have been in downtown for a long time, and they want parking and they want a standalone building. They want to be able to control their own destiny, so they know the road's not going to be there. And for them, maybe not being in downtown, it would be a better location for them. And there's a number of businesses that have relocated out of the downtown and do very well. And frankly, those spaces have now been backfilled by somebody else. It's very similar to our businesses when they choose to be elsewhere in the valley, then they've now created a vacancy that can be filled by another business that's up and coming. So.
How's our infrastructure on on our center streets and universities and so that just to accommodate business, if we're dealing in older buildings, sometimes that infrastructure can be
Well,
hard.
so I'll tell you of a process that's happened a number of times. The downtown does have some utility and infrastructure needs, and I would defer to Dave Decker and those in Public Works to address that more accurately than myself. But there has been a process that's, again, probably happened many times of looking at improving the infrastructure and the utilities in downtown. And it's like peeling an onion. That you say, okay, we're going to address the streetscape. Well, then you have to address the sprinkler system, and then you have to address the water system, and then you have to address, and after a while, it's now you're talking $1 million a block face. And it started out as, well, we just wanted to put some flowers in these little planter boxes. And so that's going to be a decision that the administration, the council is going to have to deal with in the future. At what point do we make some of these improvements in the downtown, recognizing that we may start doing one thing and this thing starts to blossom or mushroom or have scope creep, and suddenly you're addressing something 5 issues down that you never thought you were going to have to deal with. There, I'm told that there are still tracks underneath the pavement from the old trolley cars that run down Freedom Boulevard, and they're just still there. And so someday those are going to have to be addressed as new utilities and infrastructure are being put in. I think Parks and Rec would tell you how expensive it is to maintain just the sprinkler system in downtown with old pipes that are corroding or breaking or undersized or not getting water to the end of the line. We continue to have a conversation about the trees in the downtown. We have some very mature trees that many of you know, Leland Gamet. That was one of his first projects in the early 70s. Many of these trees now have overgrown their tree boxes and they're not as healthy as they used to be. And yet no one would ever think of clear cutting all of the trees in downtown. But yet these trees are dying a little bit at a time. They're diseased, some of them, and they are being replaced as they can be. But obviously you can't put in a 24-inch trunk tree to replace, you know, where you just took that out and you put in a buggy whip. So these are some of the challenges that downtown will continue to face. And a lot of it does promote and contribute to, again, that vibrancy and that sense of quality of life that we experience in our downtown that others don't. It's just like we move thousands and thousands of cars down Center Street every day. That's great for some of the businesses, but not so great for traffic. It's kind of one point out of town, and that's kind of a mixed blessing of how do you capitalize on, how do you make that better, what kind of utility and infrastructure do you put in place to deal with the potential traffic that causes on Center Street.
So speaking of traffic downtown, do we time the lights any particular way? I travel through there quite often, and I wonder.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think they're timed on, at least on east-west on Center Street.
To me, it's either you time them to minimize idling or you maximize people's sitting there thinking about maybe I'll buy something. I don't know.
Yeah, again, that's a lot of that depends on your perspective. For the retailers, I would want traffic to be really heavy but slow. And if you're a traffic engineer, you probably want traffic to move a lot more efficiently through that corridor. And so you remove parking and you synchronize the lights. And that's why First North functions the way that it does right now, to be a relief valve to Center Street. And yet when parking was removed off of First North, the mayor's office heard about it, and maybe some of you did too. But that was just an opportunity cost. That was a decision that was made consciously to help facilitate traffic out of and into downtown.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holmes. I think we better move on.
Thank you. Again, if you have additional follow-up questions, please let us know, and we'll work with Cliff on our next presentation or the topic and be prepared at that time.
Great, we look forward to the rest of your presentations. All right, we've got 6 land use items coming up in rapid fire here. We've got about 10 minutes each. All of them are going to be on the public meeting for the 18th, so these are all presentations.
Thank you. So my item is, it is a rezone application, but it's a little bit different. This is just adding an accessory apartment overlay to an existing zone. So Edward Hopkins requests a zone change from R17 to R17A, just to allow for accessory apartments in existing homes. To give a little bit of background, accessory apartments can only be operated in owner-occupied dwellings. So this is not creating duplexes per se, just another avenue for moderate income housing. There are 33 existing lots, and any future accessory apartment is subject to the ordinance that's already in place governing those. This is an important point as well. Each property with an accessory apartment must provide a minimum of 4 off-street parking stalls. This is the location. 6 South is here. This is 1100 West, and right in there. So you can see that. This is the existing zoning. This is the only R17 zone that we have in our city. So that means 7,000 square foot lots instead of the standard R18 or 8,000 square foot lots. And so the only change that would occur is there would just be an A added to this area.
So that doesn't include all the homes on 850? I mean, it just leaves out the RA and then the rest of the homes on the north side of 850?
So essentially what we would do is just change this R17 to R17A is the request that's currently going. We do have a second request, just to make sure that you're aware. There's a second request that has been filed for these non-developed lots in the R18 area, but again, it would just apply to that specific area. So
it's one plat from all rights.
Correct. Yeah. Staff had an opportunity to review this application. We found that it was consistent with the zone, obviously consistent with the general plan, and recommended approval to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission heard the item. At that time, a neighborhood meeting had not taken place. The neighborhood chair had a misunderstanding and thought that it was only applying to one specific property. Since we've had a neighborhood meeting about both of these projects. Generally, the neighborhood is supportive of it, especially those who actually live in this community. I've heard support from them, but no negativity. The Planning Commission recommended approval to this unanimously, and there weren't any other residents or anything like that from the community that came and voiced opposition or anything like that. So,
does an overlay usually require a certain number of signatures to apply?
So in this case, that's correct. The applicant went to every landowner. In that,
percentage one of the.
There was one that had a concern. Everybody else was in full favor.
Do you think you understand what they're getting?
I do. I've had several calls actually, just for further clarification, and all of those calls have ended on a positive note, and they view it as a benefit. The homeowners themselves view it as a benefit because it provides a way that homeowners can be in their homes for a longer period of time. Also provides additional moderate income housing, something that the city desperately needs, but doesn't change the character of the neighborhood. So
You don't think it changes the character of the neighborhood?
I don't, because the overall zone isn't changing, and in order to have an accessory apartment, it has to be owner occupied.
You can owner occupied singles because they can rent to other singles downstairs, right?
Correct. So in similar fashion that to how they could rent upstairs.
You see that overlay, do that in some areas.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. I read the planning commission report, and I have a little more qualms than it seems like that. Many of the commissioners commented that they have this in their neighborhood and they don't see any negatives to it. I'm quite, I have some mixed feelings on it. You know, I look at my neighborhood and say, has it changed the character of my neighborhood? And I'd have to say, yes, it does. Every time you say, you know, these accessory apartments can't be done like, you know, have to have 4 parking stalls, or they, you know, have to be owner occupied. I want to put a caveat on that, legally done, but I feel like the overlay has kind of opened the door that someone says, oh, well, my neighbor has this, I'm just going to do it, and they don't get building permits, they don't have the parking, they don't, you know, or maybe they have it when it's made, but then they sell it, and the new owner doesn't understand the regulations, and they use it for a while, but then they move out, and then they just rent it both. And I can't tell you how many there are de facto duplexes. There was a commissioner comment that it's self-policing, and I think that's great that in their area that it is self-policing. It's not in my area, and right now I'm being very negative on this, and because I'm just explaining one side. I think there's some great benefits of having accessory apartments. There's some definite positives, and this very well may be the direction we want to go in certain parts of the city, but I worry a little bit when we talk about no negatives, because I think that there are potential negatives that I hope the neighborhood understands. Mr. Connect, I hope you know this area a little bit better than I do. It seems like we've talked with some residents in this area in relation to our work on the West Side Planning Committee. It seemed like there was an area, and I didn't fully, in my mind, I couldn't quite see it, but they talked about a triangle. And I want to say this may be part of that triangle, where they said that it's becoming more and more and more just all student rentals, or rentals. It was the impression that they were giving me, that any house that came up for sale was bought up by an investor and immediately rented out. Talked about meeting with all the landowners. Do we know what the current owner occupancy rate is for this? Is it mostly owner occupied, or is it half and half? Or
to my knowledge, this is mostly owner occupied. There are a few non-conforming duplexes that were built before the current zoning standard, and those can continue in perpetuity.
Right.
I just want to say, my brother lives in this area, and I talked to Mr. Jones about conflict, and I don't know if you want to explain that, but I'm happy, if anyone's uncomfortable with me being part of the discussion for this, when we actually decide to make a decision, I'm happy to recuse myself. I just noticed, honestly, when I was looking at the, I think it was the planning report, you have a list of all the property owners. I'm like, oh, it's my brother. And so, anyway, that's the extent of, I haven't had any conversation with him about it, but I'm happy to recuse if I need to, but.
We did talk yesterday, and Councilmember Santiago shared that information with me. I don't think it triggers either any state reporting requirements or our city's recusal ordinance.
I hope you wouldn't, because that would be a conflict.
Yeah, I don't think there's any conflict there, but it's good for the council members to know that, I think.
I think it's naive for the staff to say there's no impact. I mean, I was shocked when you said that, quite frankly. Just to give you my personal opinion. There's no impact. I've seen the impact. I've been around the city long enough, and so have you. You should know that there's some impact when we have an A overlay versus a low overlay. So,
well, I would say that this presents an opportunity to create legalized dwellings. I mean, I appreciate Councilmember Harding's comment that lots of times, and it was even discussed in planning commission meeting, that the reality is that there are several places in the city where these accessory apartments are happening without being legally operated. And this provides an opportunity for those homeowners to have that. The reason this came about is the applicant actually has an accessory apartment in his home and wants to rectify that, make sure that that is legal and go through the proper channels of doing that.
That's what
So
we found out in areas that wanted to have an overlay, where someone was illegally doing it, and we made a force upon them, and went to their neighbors, and talked them into it, quite frankly.
And my fear is, what I've seen is again, that if it's not allowed at all, then the ones that are doing it, they kind of stand out. But when it's allowed, well, okay, well, this one doesn't have the off-street parking for it, but they're kind of doing it anyway, and so it's less clear to the neighbors that that's actually non-legal, and so it can. But the beautiful, I apologize if anyone actually read my blog. I talked about this here, but I saw this work in one instance in my neighborhood. A young family, just married, were able to buy a house because they were able to rent out their basement. And then they had a few kids, and they had more income, and so they were able to grow into that and stop renting it. And at some point, all of their kids are going to be gone, and they're going to be able to rent it out again and supplement their income. I mean, it can work beautifully. But one potential downside is that, in my estimation, the greatest need in my neighborhood is for houses that larger families can grow into, or they can move up into and stay in the neighborhood. We have people that love the neighborhood and want to stay there, and there are no houses that are large enough to accommodate them. And the reason for that is many houses that have 3 or more bedrooms have been subdivided, and are functioning as duplexes or accessory apartments, to one degree of legality or another. And then the ones that aren't, they have families in them that are going to be there for 30 years. And so, but that's the greatest need. And I think part of that has been because we have this A overlay, and people, feel that they can increase their property value on their way out by doing this. And some of them do it legally, some of them don't. So there's both sides to that. There are benefits for it, and then there are potential negatives. And if we had better enforcement, that might keep away some of the negatives. If we had, if we didn't have such great demand that people that are looking for these basements had other options, then the economics wouldn't be driving some of this as well. So I mean, it's multiple things, but obviously the question at hand is this in the best interest of these neighbors, of the neighborhood, of the city, to allow this A overlay? And part of it is I hope the ones that are saying, yeah, I'm okay with this, really understand both sides of that, and they're not just being told one side by someone who wants it, and so they're only presenting one side. I hope they understand what they're getting into if they get this.
I'd really be interested in hearing the neighborhood chair's assessment of the neighborhood meeting that once it was held. So,
and that has been held now, right?
that's correct. I haven't received a report from him. I attended that. I haven't received anything official. I'm sure that he'll be here for your council meeting.
A couple more comments, and then we move on.
Can you zoom in on the properties? And I'd like to see if they have double car garages and driveways.
In this side, I can't, unfortunately. This is a PowerPoint, but I can provide that to you.
Yeah, it's a little hard to tell from this 30,000 foot view, or whatever distance. And
so this one right here, that's a duplex. And this one is a duplex.
So it wouldn't have any effect on the current non-conforming duplexes.
Right. And then for instance, if this was a regular homeowner in one of these single-family homes, effectively, there's nothing that changes. They have to provide at least 4 parking stalls, 2 of which can be in the garage, and then 2 can be in the driveway.
So when you say they have to do that, we don't license these like regular rental dwelling licensing.
We require that they record an official document with the county recorder.
Right. So at what point do we go and check on the parking?
It's complaint driven.
So we don't really check on it up front.
But there's building permit.
They have to give us, yeah.
So when they draw a building permit, do we check on the parking?
Yes. I think Councilman Connect's question is, how many of these could really get legal parking for 4 spaces? So if you could do some analysis on that, Bob, before it comes back to that, I think that's good.
Yep. And just follow up is, part of the problem that we've seen in the older, smaller homes, and these, I don't know the square footage of these homes. If you take, what is it, a normal family home, and you chop off some of the bedrooms and you take out the basement, which is typically what becomes the accessory, then the upstairs is no longer as functional for a family, at least a normal family or a long-term family, which is why after 12 years, when my kids got to a certain point, I moved out of Mazer, because we had the choice, take over the whole house and move. So you take a house that is functional for a long-term family and you make it kind of dysfunctional, potentially, unless they want to keep flip-flopping it.
That will change the character of the neighborhood.
Thank you, regarding the character in the neighborhood, just your comment. So the parking will be allowed because 2 in the driveway and 2 in the garage, if they have a double garage. That satisfies the requirement. Is that correct?
Correct.
Although in reality, that would never, I mean, they're not gonna park there because if the people who live in the garage are different than people who live in the basement, they're gonna be on the street. So there's probably a weakness in our ordinance or something. That satisfies the parking requirement.
Nor does that account for the tendency to use the garage for storage on homes that are this small.
That have any homes really parking in that. So there's a real weakness there. Changing to this, that will affect the neighborhood. So cars will have more cars on the street, which fight everywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Next up is item number 7, request for an amendment to allow larger signage. This is the public council renewal. This will be presented by Aaron Osborne.
Build something ground up, designed to have accessory.
Thank you. So the applicant here, he's actually in the back of the room. Scott used to work for economic development. You might remember him. We worked with the applicant on this, the language for this proposal. So Scott came to us with an idea for new signage at the mall that wouldn't fit under the current code. So we tried to find a way that we could make it fit into the code, but still have it kind of restrict it to just this area, being the mall. So you'll see the ordinance amendment here. We've added a section, or the proposal is to add a section D. If you can go back to the previous slide, we can look at the. Oh, okay. Maybe.
It's on.
There you go. Okay, so there's a sign there. So the proposed sign was taller and had more square footage than what the current ordinance allows in the C3 zone. So this section D tries to allow for that by stating the increased size, but that it would need to be on a property that has 1,800 linear feet of frontage on I-15, and that the sign has to be adjacent to I-15. So we took that to Planning Commission with a recommendation of approval. I believe they went with that recommendation as well. And just to give you the full story, there's another part of the sign package that will be coming back to you with a different amendment for signs along University Avenue. But for this one, that's kind of where it's at. Do you have any questions?
What's a billboard sign as far as this, the regular billboards going on I-15?
I believe they're typically like 40 by 26.
Forty by 26 square feet, so I'd have to get my calculator out.
That'd be 1,040. This
This
would be bigger.
would be bigger than a regular.
Yeah, if you take in everything that's on the sign, you've got the LED screen here, which accounts for part of it, the name of the mall, and then their tenant spaces, their anchor spaces. So you add all that together, and it's about 1,800.
What's the square footage of the?
1,400.
What's the square footage of just the LED screen?
The applicant could probably speak to that. I mean, I can look through the notes.
I'd say 24 feet by 32 feet.
Are there state laws that cover signage on the freeways? I'm sure we forget where is this at a maximum, or is it cities that?
Well, the state
manage
laws cover off-premise advertising. And since this would be on-premise
So it'd be
advertising, it would
on-premise.
be up to the city.
But since it's next to a freeway, do they
They have rules about video and how much video and all that, or, images that you can project onto a freeway.
Well, we would, because our electronic sign ordinance that would require the images to be static would apply.
Okay.
The 8-second static and all that.
That wouldn't exceed anything that the state has as far as a sign next to the freeway, I guess what I'm asking.
Electronic billboards by state law have an 8-second maximum. And so they can't move any faster than that.
So this change wouldn't exceed anything?
Right.
No, we already have that in code, and that's not being proposed to be changed.
What about brightness? There have been times I've been on the freeway and it is painful to drive by those electronic billboards. And I don't know if it's like their sensor stopped working until they were still daytime brightness or something. But I mean, there's times where I'm curious, is there anything in our ordinance?
Our existing code has brightness limitations.
Okay.
Based on ambient light, and there's a standard that they have to meet in Provo to do that.
You just changed your sentence.
Apparently.
I like the fact that this is right on, that it states I-15, and that's great. Do you see any, maybe this is for Brian, because of the other things that we've experienced, will this affect us in any way? We are doing it down here. I know we're tying it to I-15, so.
We do have some ongoing litigation regarding signs. We're going to address that in our closed session tonight.
Would this have anything to do that would affect?
We'll address that in our closed session.
Thank you.
Are there any residents within? I mean, is this going to be shining in anyone's bedroom?
So the residents are all across the freeway until you go further up north, up in here in this corner. Once you kind of go under the bridge, there's some residences there. But the direction of the sign and where the light would be emitting, we really don't think it's going to affect any residences.
Gary, let me answer your question here this way, though, and to say that electronic signs are already allowed here. The proposed change is only to allow them to make a bigger sign than they would otherwise be able to make. Right, and so that's, we'll talk about that more later, but this is because of the way our electronic sign ordinance is written and the fact that the mall ownership also has property that fronts University Avenue, and this is part of one contiguous piece. It's already allowed an electronic sign. That's why that's not part of the change.
Well, Brian's correct. This is one larger sign. The current ordinance would allow them all to have 2 signs on this frontage. The square footage of those 2 signs is the same as this one sign. So they're really just, we work out a trade with them. Instead of putting up 2 signs that are smaller, we agreed that one sign that was bigger would be acceptable.
Right, thank you. Next up, we have item number 8.
This item is a proposed rezoning in the southwest area of the city
includes approximately 55.24 acres. I don't want to go approximate and go to the hundreds. It doesn't seem approximate anymore, does it? I'm having the same trouble, Bryce. This gives an indication of the area. Shows the R18 PD is the proposed zone, and an SC1, which is a commercial zone, a light commercial zone. The outline of the area on the neighborhood plan, just so you can see this area is split by the two neighborhoods with Lakewood on the east and Sunset on the west. And then the current general plan designation for residential, it's on the north side of the parkway. And then the current zoning is an A15 zone for that area. This gives you a little bit better idea of where that location is in relationship to the entire area, with the 1100 west here on the east and 1600 west to the west, and not touching the property, but a little bit further away. And then it fronts against the parkway on the south. This is a proposed development plan for the site. It shows some basic land use or residential land use components. One which is proposed for an LDR zone, a little bit tighter density than some of the zones we have, but then an R18 and then an attached senior housing. I believe the LDR was also proposed for senior oriented type housing. The site also included a concept plan for this entire block. Go back one, the block, we have Footprinters Park here on the north, going around through that area. So there was a plan to show how it could fill out through this area. As noted from the staff report and from the Planning Commission action, there was a recommendation to not approve this rezoning at this time. You'll notice from the staff report and from the minutes of the Planning Commission, there wasn't necessarily a denial of the idea and the concept of the project. In fact, the Planning Commission liked the variety of housing types through the area, but rather it really hinges on three key issues. One is the availability of the sewer for the area, and that is basically a study being done by Horrocks and Associates. The time of the Planning Commission was about 90 days out to have a 30% completion. At the 30% completion, they feel they'll know where a pump station would be located and have an idea that will have to be a proposal as to whether or not there'd be a new sewage plant down in that area, or if indeed it'd be an expansion of the existing plant in the current location. The second area was appropriateness of requested zones. The commercial area here on the lower right, there's just a consideration as we're doing this neighborhood plan update through the area. There are expressions of the policy for appropriate commercial zoning. And we do feel that the one on 2050, which is really an extension of Geneva Road, would likely be one of those. 500 West would likely be one, as the committee talked about. This area fronted by the Parkway, 500 West and I-15, would likely even be a regional commercial area through that site. What we're not sure about is if we have intermittent commercial areas. And again, we're not saying that it may not be commercial, but at this time, we really don't know what size or what the function of that commercial would be. And then the third, related to requested changes associated to the project plan. The principal one of those really deals with Dry Creek. And this is an area that is probably the most distinctive feature in that southwest area, even though it's not really a river, but it's something that really could be built upon. And from the start of the Southwest neighborhood discussions, which are probably even coming up on 3 years ago when those began, some of these were identified as corridors which could be developed as open space and help to tie the community together. Staff comments and Planning Commission comments related to maintaining it. This is really an open space corridor that ties that neighborhood together. And you can also see from some of the neighborhood comments, that was a prime concern. One of the others did talk somewhat about connections onto Lakeview Parkway, where that changed over time, where engineering now believes that a point that's close to midway between 1600 West and 1100 West would be probably appropriate for another connection to the subdivision. There are otherwise limited connections, which would be here at, was it 1150 South? I can't think of the name of the street. It's
1560.
1560. Thank you. And then, you know, as you can see, you go up this area, there aren't connections until areas are built out. Are there any questions?
Is that the same map that we saw on the other proposal that showed LDR?
I'm sorry, the wrong way. This might show a little bit better. The LDR was it's area in yellow.
Right, so if you go back to the one that did show LDR.
Oh, there we go.
That one.
This one.
Specifically, they removed little pieces of green, the open space that used to be.
This was the original one, actually.
That's the original?
This was the original one. And so the other was added later where you see these green spaces here, but these were the newer proposals.
Right, and one has to question how functional those will be, or if we'd be better off in taking a fee in lieu and building a real park elsewhere that would service the area and be useful for everyone.
That's correct. And in evaluating the site, in the request for a PD zone, there are certain requirements in a plan development or project plan that is a minimum open space and a functional open space. And we hadn't quite gotten to that yet because of trying to work out the open space on the Dry Creek area. And then I think, like you say, we're looking at options too that may try and look at places to consolidate the open space into a bigger area, or else in lieu of funding, that an area eventually be at least 5 acres in size to really be functional. So it almost have to be on a border or an edge, and then maybe as the developments continue through that area, it could be added upon.
So the West Side Goals and Policies that you all looked at a few weeks ago talked about the desire for open space in these developments. One of the first things we'd like to do with the next West Side Committee is put some meat on those bones. What does that mean? How much should it be? How should it be designed? Open space that's sandwiched behind lots isn't the most usable, isn't the most functional. So we wanted to talk with the committee about a better understanding of what that means. The other thing we want to accomplish with that committee is the land use map, so which will handle those commercial node questions.
And in fairness, the applicants stated in the meeting that they would, address these through the project. Staff's main concern, though, unless we really have addressed it, we don't have a way to tie that down in development agreements and other things that may pin it down a little bit more. And so that was also a concern mentioned.
Were these, was it a PUD type development that they were proposing, or they would?
Parts of it would be definitely because you have common areas and parks and streets and things.
That's what I was wondering about the maintenance of that interior there, because it's hard for a single family owner to try to do something in their backyard with that type of thing.
And generally, I don't know if that meant 3 individual HOAs, 3 individual and 1 overriding HOA, or what the arrangement would be, but because of those open spaces, you would need some kind of maintenance through there. I believe that with Dry Creek, the implication was the city would take that over eventually, maintain that.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Ritzer. Let's move on to item number 9. Where is it?
That's the bottom one. Yeah, can we get it to where we can just cycle through all those images? Thanks. So this is the project site. The applicant, Brian Dabb, is requesting a zone change for, it's about a half-acre piece of property on the north side of Center Street and about 2 acres on the south side. This is the intersection of 900 East and Center Street. Give you a little bit of familiarity with the location. You go to the next image. This doesn't allow me to. So this is just the proposed project overlaying there. The things to note are the existing structures that still remain. So right here on the corner is actually a landmark structure, the Van Wagenen House. The proposal is in the vacant area to the east of it to build an 8-unit apartment. On the south property, this building, and this building are existing apartments to remain. The rest of the buildings on the north side of the south property, if that's not confusing enough, but those buildings would be demolished in favor of 3 9-plex buildings. Could you go to the next slide? You should be able to just click that arrow through and we can go through them that way. But this was actually an analysis done by one of the neighbors, just demonstrating the densities that are nearby and how the applicant's proposal related as far as building height, massing, density, setbacks, things like that. The reason why this is important, and Brian, you can go to the next slide while I'm mentioning this, but the reason why this is important for this proposal is in reviewing the application, staff had been raising some concerns with the applicant. And one of the primary concerns that we raised was the compatibility with the project of the project plan with the adjacent developments. The request is for the medium density residential zone, which with that zone actually comes design guidelines as well. And a lot of those design guidelines talk very specifically about being compatible in terms of setback, in terms of building height, in terms of form and function. And our concerns that we raised were primarily that not necessarily against the density allowances of the zone, but more about how that density was being applied to the site, how it was being designed, what kind of considerations were being given for adjacent properties. The applicant had disagreed with staff and has asked that the municipal council make the decision now for the zone change. During the Planning Commission hearing, planning actually upheld planning staff's recommendation, and they also recommend that the zone change is premature without pinned down design, considering the sensitive nature of this corridor. Center Street's actually defined in the general plan in Chapter 5. The urban design section specifically talks about this portion of Center Street being an important one where a design corridor should be considered. So between that design considerations, the design considerations, even in the zone that the applicant was requesting, as well as an inability of the proposed project plan to even meet the MDR zone, Planning Commission upheld the recommendation for denial. And that's what's before you. The other thing to note is because of the Van Wagenen home, which is on the corner, it is a property that's subject to Landmarks Commission review. Landmarks reviewed the project and had major concerns about the north property. They expressed concerns about the south property. There are, this is a landmark structure which is directly adjacent to it. Across the street here and here are also 2 landmark structures. So they were concerned about compatibility with adjacency, but they very definitely expressed some strong opposition to the north property with a multifamily zone being placed on a property where an existing landmark structure was. They had concerns about what was a single family home being divided into multifamily units, a multifamily project being built nearby in what's traditionally a very single family neighborhood. So as such, Landmarks has recommended denial as well. Just the last item of note, I know we're running tight on time. The last item of note is at the Planning Commission hearing, there were a number of neighbors that came and spoke. Most of them spoke very similarly to staff's recommendations and spoke about staff's concerns about the design of the project and so forth. There was one individual, the neighborhood chair for the Provost neighborhood, Richard Holmes, did express that any of the conversations that he had been generally favorable to the project in terms of redevelopment for the property and looking for ways to have something better there. But everything else that staff has received to this point has been quite strong in opposition. But again, that's primarily related very specifically to the design of the project plan. But what's before you is a rezone request, and with something that sensitive in nature, we just felt like it's very difficult to regulate and pin down something as sensitive as design without being able to use the zone change as the leverage over that.
So it seems like one person has spearheaded a committee to create a design corridor, which the standards for it that wasn't in place. And they're not quite finished with that, but part of that is the setback from the street and being compatible with other buildings that are there. And I think this sticks out farther, this big proposed project.
It did originally. That was some feedback that we had given them. The MDR zone, those design guidelines I talked about, actually require the setback to match the homes anyway.
Okay.
So the applicant had pushed the building back, but just pushing the building back doesn't necessarily resolve all of the issues. There are, Bryce, if you can go, I think it's 2 more images to the through here. Oh, actually it's starting right there. As staff, we actually did do some massing models as a way of demonstrating that. So to be fair, they are white boxes because that's generally what a massing model is, and we don't know what materials the applicant would use other than the zone doesn't permit vinyl siding, so we know it wouldn't be vinyl. But we did do some massing models as a way of demonstrating visually what we mean about compatibility in terms of form and mass. Now on the north side, as far as form, the stepped roof definitely helps. That's one of the best things that they had done. The first story was at the same level as the Van Wagenen home, had a similar feel from the street, and then they stepped up. But in this particular one, because this is an area where that setback wasn't being matched, you can see, although the form might match the adjacent structure, it's still really not compatible, and it's still a little bit in your face, for lack of a better term. If you'll go back one. Then on the south side, 3- and 4-story apartment structures with the mass being oriented parallel with the street as opposed to being perpendicular, you can see the distinctive difference that comes into play. So those are a lot of the concerns that we raised as staff, and we just felt like the zone itself, if granted outright, would permit this. And so without having those design things tied down, we just don't feel comfortable.
So going back, we go to the slide of the overall project. Yeah, so on the south side, the overall project includes some 1-story units that I think are as old as the apartments on the north end, but I can be wrong. So he's actually investing by putting from going from flat roofs to peaked roofs. He's a roofer, so he's putting on new roofs on those one-story ones. So you look at the overall acreage, and instead of spreading out the density across the whole thing and tearing down everything there and starting over, he's keeping the one-stories on the south side and going 3 and 4 on the north side, which is what you just showed.
That's the problem we run into a lot. If you've ever heard me give any kind of a sermon on urban design, a lot of times we use density as a number to regulate things because we feel like if we can regulate the density, everything will be fine, when really a lot of times incompatibility and something functioning right is more about the design than the density. This is an example of that, where because there's a significant amount of property that's being underutilized on half of it, it's in essence being overutilized on the other, and you can see the impact when it comes to the design.
That's not a historic home on the southeast corner then? Just the Van Wagen home is the only historic?
Right. On the southeast corner, it does qualify, but it's not a listed landmark structure.
And this plan would take out the Van Wagen home or not?
No, it would leave the Van Wagen home as a landmark structure. They'd have to get a certificate of appropriateness to demolish that, but it would maintain that. But it's also a similar thing where, because the Van Wagen home's a single-family home, they're capitalizing on being able to put more density on the vacant land that's nearby, and that was primarily Landmark's concern, was single-family home and an 8-plex. In the way that it was being designed in the space that they had was incompatible.
All right, thank you, Mr. Curry. Let's move on to item number 10. Mr. Arbor.
Yep. Okay, so here we've got, here's the other slide first. Let's show where this started. So this started with somebody interested in this property up in the Waukee neighborhood, the Wash Hut. The interested party is looking for new tenants for this space, and it's currently in the RC zone, which doesn't really allow anything except for what was there in 2002. This came up before, some of you might remember, the Bike Collective ran into the same issue. So it's an old commercial structure where nothing is really permitted. So we worked with the applicant. He's proposed this language for the RC zone anywhere in the city to add a couple additional permitted uses, but limiting those to only in existing commercial structures. So he's proposed eating places, personal services. Professional services was already permitted, but currently it's only permitted in historical buildings. The proposal is to allow that in any existing commercial structure. So we have a few of these around the city within RC zones. What used to be a commercial structure, used to have some sort of business in there, has now been left vacant or turned into some kind of quasi-residential use. This allows those to go back to kind of a more viable commercial use, going back to what the building was built for. And staff looked at this. We think it's appropriate for the RC zone. We think that having those old commercial structures in the middle of these neighborhoods to be an amenity to the neighborhood rather than kind of a blight to the neighborhood helps the city, helps the neighborhood. We took the planning commission. They've recommended approval as well. So it's to you now, and I'll take any questions if you have them.
Is there any time limits as far as how long they can stay open at night that we would consider for something like this?
There are, further down the RC section, there was a section added when the Bike Collective came in that has a little bit more regulation.
I'm just thinking of eating places. If we want to have eating places open until 10 or 11 in a residential neighborhood, if that's something.
I believe business hours is one of those things that is regulated. Can you pull up the code?
I appreciate these comments. I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm looking for the unintended negative consequences. And
sure.
What are we going to hear when one of these things converts to a commercial and the people around them saying, well, why did you let this happen? And we say, well, we can't do anything about it now because they already have the vested rights. And then we have, yeah, so if we could head any of those off before.
Yeah, so 1432. I believe it's the last section of 1432. Yeah, scroll all the way down there. Okay, yeah, hours of operation 7 a.m. to no later than 10 p.m. is already in the code for existing commercial structures. So that could help alleviate some of those concerns, possibly. There's a few other maximum size, loading doors, alcohol sales wouldn't be permitted. There are some design standards that would go along with that as well.
Any parking standards?
Just the parking standards found in the code already. So anything in the RC zone pretty much has to go with what's existing. So if we go back to that slide, you can see they have maybe 6 or 8.
I think the bicycle collector doesn't have any off-street parking.
Right. This one actually does. It's not parking that we allow today, but it does have people to park off the street. If those were to become personal services or restaurants or anything like that.
What about something like, I think it's So Delicious on 300 or 400, that's a.
Yeah, drive-throughs wouldn't be permitted.
No drive-throughs or anything like that.
Right. That's under a different.
So that's what, I was curious, what prevents a drive-through from happening?
Well, the structure itself would prevent that. They'd have to come in with a building permit and we'd address it then and say, you don't have the stacking spaces required, so you won't be able to do that.
What about a shop, like a vaping shop or a tattoo parlor or some of those that maybe people don't necessarily want to live right next door to?
Sure.
Would that be in professional service or personal or?
We've excluded a couple, 6294, 6295. I believe those are, what were those? Those were.
I'm sure we've excluded the ones you referred to.
Yeah.
That's pretty typical that we exclude those.
And again, in professional services, we were excluding, in professional service, we were excluding like rehab facilities, stuff like that.
Use that acronym, sorry. Sexually oriented businesses is what I meant.
But you're calling it.
That could have been eliminated with written notes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Armour. Okay, last item. Before we get to our closed meeting, we have 7 items for the closed meeting, right?
This one should be quite quick. You heard this item about a month ago. This is a request to rezone this entire area in gray is the M1 area. That's the total of the 58.6 acres. That includes the zone where it overlaps roads and railroad right-of-ways and things like that. At that meeting, council asked planning staff to assemble some more specifics about exact acreages of all the parcels being affected. There was a request from Russ Jacobson. That's his northern property that's highlighted in blue, these 2 northern properties that amount to just under 3 acres of property. And during your council work session a month ago, there was also a buyer who was interested in purchasing this piece, who was asking that that piece would be excluded as well from the rezone request. So we assembled this. I believe that that was emailed out a couple weeks ago. You should have all received that. But that should provide that information that you were looking for. As far as planning is concerned, a lot of what our thoughts have been is really, as far as guiding policies that we have right now, the general plan and the recently adopted Southeast Neighborhood Plan all suggest that this area should be residential in nature. And so that's really the impetus behind the rezone request that's in front of you. I think we're looking to you now with the question of really what should the area become. The risk in excluding properties and allowing residential in other areas are a creation of future incompatible uses. There is not just the risk, but there is the certainty that an entire rezone over the area would create incompatibility, at least in the short term, just in the fact that there would be non-conforming existing manufacturing uses. But I think the big question that's to be asked and answered right now is primarily, what do we want the area to become? What's the future of it? And that's the direction that we would like to see it go.
So there had been some discussion, I have a concern on that southern piece, the 4.77, that it does not include the 0.16 on the southeast corner. Whereas I believe there's a different proposal. The owner called me today, and we talked about it, and so it's like she said, well, I got a backup proposal, and it would appear that the backup proposal may include buying and redeveloping that watering hole saloon where they do tires and stuff, which is a property that I do not want to see built around, developed around. It needs to be redeveloped with the 4.77, or I don't know when it'll ever happen. So personally, I'd like to see the 4.77 added to the rezone that we're doing here.
Meaning it would go red or it would go blue?
It would go red, and I'd even throw in the 0.16 with it.
So you got the 4.77 to convert to red and include the 0.16. Okay.
And just to be clear, so there's not too much confusion, the red we gave you just as the mass number north of storage units. I believe that was one of the discussions you had a month ago. But our recommendation, the storage unit, actually both of the property owners, Bear River that's here, as well as the Pay storage units down there, we have had contact with them and they're fine with being non-conforming uses in a residential zone.
So you could go all the way to the bottom of it?
You could go all the way. If you're not looking to exclude that property, there's really no reason to leave the storage units as M1.
I appreciate the questions that are being asked. I worry about going just halfway on this and worrying. I think if we're going to do it, I think we need to do what's in the long-term best interest. And if we're not willing to step on toes, I wonder if we should not do it at all. If our vision is for this to be residential, then I think we kind of need to go all in on it. I think it doesn't help to have, almost a zebra stripes of high-density residential and then manufacturing, high-density residential manufacturing. And that's kind of what we. Now, even with that said, because these storage units, especially the ones that are just being built, I mean, there's what, 50, maybe not quite, but 30-year life on that thing before it's going to be even make any sense to redevelop, in my estimation. so I could possibly see everything south of that top storage unit being manufacturing, and then just say everything north is going to be zoned residential.
So the second offer on 4.77, I hear is residential.
Is residential?
Yes.
But is that wise? Is that wise to tuck high density residential between some storage units?
Just up on Slate Canyon Drive, we've got storage units and boom, 6 homes right next to it.
But does that make for a good community?
Oh yeah, we love it.
Okay.
And the storage units are a real quiet neighbor.
Okay.
So that's the one benefit to storage units, which although, I mean, they fall under a light manufacturing use, but if you're talking about a non-conforming, incompatible use that's adjacent to a residential neighborhood, it's probably about as innocuous as a manufacturing use could be.
So anyway, that's just my concern is that we're starting to get so many that are don't want to be a part of it, or they don't mind being non-conforming and could go for a long time. We're just getting to the point that I really think the vision here is to have a great place for young professionals. I like what you said earlier about things being built, purpose-built from the beginning rather than conversion. I think this may be the first area in the city where we could have a purpose-built community with, that may have a lot more parking because we're expecting 6 people per house and whatnot, rather than conversions. And I think there's a good vision for that. I just worry that if we water it down with all of these exemptions, are we going to get it, or are we just going to get?
Well, that's why I'm saying anything. Right now, there's a red line there at the top of the existing where storage units are being built, and I would just go and do that whole southern section. But then that leaves the question of the 2 blue areas up by the intersection about, okay, do we want to see M1 uses like the owners potentially envision, or do we feel like it ought to be included with this? And when we include this zoning, I think it's understood that it could be residential and commercial uses, or it's a mixed use vision, right?
Yeah, well, the rezone request that's in front of you right now is for LDR. Planning Commission made a recommendation of R110, and I think the specifics of that are in the report of action. So for the sake of time, I won't go into that. But the neighborhood plan and the general plan actually all specifically talk about this area being mixed use. So a residential in the nature of, say, an MDR with a batching overlay, but allowances for commercial to exist.
I think that's a great vision, but I think we need to commit to it. I'm afraid you could get some undesirable residential if it's going to be kind of shoehorned around manufacturing. I think you're just not setting yourself up for the vision. So I'm just throwing it out that I think we should maybe consider, if we're going to do it, consider going all in, even if it upsets some property owners. It's just something we should consider.
When you talked to the 2 storage unit property owners, did you get any kind of a sense for the useful life of the existing storage units? They look kind of old to me, but I don't know.
Well, this the 4.69 up here is actually being constructed right now, so they're brand new. But the pay storage units are nearing the end of their life. They indicated that they don't have any specific plans of going anywhere in the near future. But it's not necessarily out of the question. So no, there was not a direct answer, but there was some indication that that might be sooner than later in government terms. Any other questions?
All right, thank you very much.
One more question. The sale of the property on the 4.77, is that, do you know if that's been completed yet? And what are the plans for that? Should that sale be completed?
We don't know right now. A month ago, there was the buyer who has it under contract right now. Their intentions are to build storage units on it, but we have heard since that there's a second option on the property, and that second option is looking to develop it as residential. I have had a conversation. I'm not sure if they are the second option or not, but I did speak with an individual that came in and actually showed me plans for residential development there as well. So we know that there's interest, but as far as the property actually under contract, I believe the buyers, the under contract buyers are looking to develop it as storage units.
If we chose to take that whole area in gray and make it R110 with the intent to move it to some sort of mixed use in the future, would the buyer under contract, are they in early enough?
They have no application in the city. Yeah. So there's no vested rights on that property as it sits right now.
Okay, thank you.
So before we leave this, I would like to make a motion that we consider, well, I'll just make a motion, then we can consider that we do everything in gray.
That's R110?
Yeah, and then if someone wants to come back, including the fellow that wanted to be exempted out and say, well, I've got a great project, I think it's compatible with the vision, fine, let's see it.
So the motion is that what would be brought to us in our council meeting in a week.
Everything in gray.
Would be.
So that would be the 58.6 acre under the initial request.
So the basic thing that you're eliminating, from what I've heard here, would be more storage units.
Potentially, and then bringing in Dean and Hayes.
It would stop any other industrial use from getting a toehold and getting started, yes. Because of the intent of the neighborhood plan.
And anyone who is already doing it, they would just be non-conforming for as long as they want to continue that non-conforming use. But any redevelopment, any conversion would need to be.
But that potential buyer that, I am interested in storage units, you would not be able to do that because he has no plan.
Right.
Those northern property owners want to exit would continue. Are they functioning now as?
No, these two northern blue properties are completely vacant. And there's no, that's Russ Jacobson owns all of it. He has an idea of what he wants to do, but doesn't know when, and hasn't presented any kind of plans to the city.
So that's the person that would be upset.
Well, I think both of them, the north and south sections of blue, the 477, they would be upset too.
The decreases the property value in downtown.
Well, temporarily.
And why would they be? They
Well,
they have other uses for that.
Yeah, I should mention, since your last council work session, I have been contacted by two other property owners that previously had indicated that they were in favor of the LDR zone change, who had since found out that the Planning Commission recommendation was R110, and they expressed some major concern. The LDR was fine with them because it was somewhat comparable in property value, but the R110, they were concerned about what that would do. But
And that's even after it was understood that R110 was just as a temporary zone, that the vision was for it to become MDR or mixed use, and they still had concerns. But yeah, so the motion, I mean, there's been these requests to opt out or to not be rezoned, but in the motion that's on the table would not follow those requests. We would be not honoring those requests.
And just to clarify, the motion is just to set the default starting point for discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that for to have that as our starting point for next week.
Motion by Mr. Knapp, second by Mr. Hardy. Is there any discussion on the motion?
This is already coming to the council meeting.
On the 18th.
So you're just giving direction to staff, or why the motion?
Yeah, otherwise-
If it's already coming.
Otherwise, they'll come back with this map, but if we give them direction, it'll be everything gray.
It's really just setting what the implied motion is that we're starting with, which could be changed. Let's try and write the resolution.
It helps Brian to write the resolution.
Right.
What was, sorry, I think I had stepped out to get something set up for the closed meeting. What was Mr. Knapp's motion?
That everything in gray be considered for the R110 next week.
I can do that, but as long as each one of those that have asked to be opt-out are specifically notified so that they have an opportunity to attend the meeting and express their concern. I just don't want that to go in the paper and, oh my gosh, I didn't even see it, but I want them specifically notified.
Like really all the property owners should be notified.
And you're saying they wouldn't be
Yeah.
grandfathered, and those that want to be out, that want to be grandfathered, they would not be, they wouldn't be able to continue their existing use?
No.
Those are vacant now, so if they want to do industrial, they wouldn't be allowed to because their zoning would change. They don't have an application in and no vested rights in.
You're saying the current uses are still.
The current uses, right, they're industrial, yeah.
Yeah, all of these uses that are existing, there's buildings, there's operating businesses, those are all non-conforming, or they would become non-conforming and they can continue, yeah. It's just these blue areas that are the vacant pieces of property that have no vested rights.
Quick question, does this change, they talk about valuation, I don't want harm intended, maybe because it changed my valuation, does it really change the valuation? Is there
Oh, yeah.
Are their taxes gonna go down?
Well, if the county actually assesses it as vacant residential property,
These are businesses,
it probably would.
steel and auto repair and commercial buildings.
Yeah, well, the county would assess those with their current uses. I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about just the vacant pieces of property.
No, I'm talking about existing.
No, the county assessor would assess them based on their operating use.
Okay.
Yeah, it's independent of the zoning that's on the property.
And that also means they're assessing them. So you have an existing business, the value is not gonna change. They're gonna still assess you big, and your value is technically still big.
Right, it's, the two individuals that contacted me were actually here, and I believe it's here, although they wouldn't specifically tell me which property. But both of those are also vacant pieces of property that haven't been developed yet. My anticipation, if I had to speculate, it's probably more that they're not developers, they're looking to sell the land to a developer, and the zoning that's on the ground really would affect how much they could sell that ground for.
But hopefully so would the master plan, the neighborhood.
If they were willing to go through the entitlement process.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on the motion?
For discussion purposes only, and municipal just to have reservations about it.
Okay, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Jones, I think we have a closed session.
We do. We have a closed session requested, and we've got topics covering pretty much every possible use of a closed session. Character and competence of the individual, reasonable imminent litigation, and strategy sessions regarding both acquisition and sale of property. So it would be appropriate to move into closed session to discuss those items.
Okay, motion. Moved by Mr. Stewart, second by Mr. Green. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Let's reconvene in the other.